Very well, we continue with the debate on P62. Next list of the speakers, Deputy Giedath.
Sir, first thing I'd like to say is that I'm very pleasantly surprised by the atmosphere in the chamber in the last Tuesday. I think it's been extremely friendly, extremely constructive, and I actually feel a little bit sheepish about having been slightly aggressive yesterday morning. When I found myself agreeing with Deputy Tadier and Deputy Southern, I actually started to worry whether we were being piped nitrous oxide through the air conditioning. I have checked, it's not the case. But yes, I actually agree with them. Importing cheap labor is not a sustainable way of maintaining our economy. So Jersey has lived on a cheap product, whether it was agriculture or hospitality, tourism, for many years and successfully. But this is not possible anymore. Jersey just cannot do cheap. We have to do expensive. And Deputy Tadier was entirely right to compare us to Switzerland. So that's the model that eventually we have to follow. Our salaries have to be high. Our service has to be superlative. People have to come to it because it's a luxury service and bring lots of money with them and not think of Jersey as a place where you can get a cheap service. To get there, unfortunately, will take many years. My own estimate is about 15. That's what it would take to convert the two industries, both with technology and by aiming at a different market. That's how long as it would take. Probably 15, maybe 20 years. So we do have a long time to live with temporary workers. And in this case, it's not just temporary, it's seasonal workers. It's people who come here for less than 9 months. Because lodging homes are closing for different reasons, one of them is market pressure, and the other one, of course, is regulations. Because they're closing very, very fast, we do not have anywhere to put those temporary workers. It is a real problem. It's a problem that we have now, and it is something that we have to fix. So we will vote against this proposition, or most of it, because it is unfortunately poorly written. However, the problem exists. It is a real problem, and it needs to be sorted. What we need are inexpensive accommodation. And we're not talking about affordable housing. This is a very different market. What we need is as inexpensive as possible accommodation. And I was a little bit surprised to hear Deputy Doublet disparage the hut, the temporary accommodation that was suggested by the Deputy of Trinity. Because actually, if you're going to live a few months somewhere and try to make as much money as possible and live with it, there are good places. I have lived in much less than that. And recently, my kids who are going through university are living in less than that. I was thinking about the Navy recently because I visited a submarine, and they are living in less than that, much, much less than that, for 6, 8, 9 months on end. The thing that carries them through is that it's temporary. You don't need the same services when you're somewhere for a few months than you do if it's the last house you will own. So the two things that we need to let this happen, as we've heard, the money is there. It's a commercial product. We don't need to intervene. The locations are there. There are a few buildings around the island that can be converted. So the location exists. And the last two things that the people who want to solve this problem for us, we don't really need to be involved, are qualifications, because most of the places that can be converted into temporary accommodation are qualified. You need housing qualification to use them, or you would need, even if they're offices, if they're converted into apartments, you still need housing qualification. So that is one thing that the government can supply, is to say, that's fine, we'll just, and of course, this can quite simply be asked to the Assembly, will you waive qualification requirements for this particular building? That will be dedicated to temporary accommodation. The other thing, and I must say there, I'm not completely certain, having seen what I've seen in the UK as student accommodation, I am sure that their building controls allow that. If it's a home that you're going to live in, yes, maybe you need a dining area. But if you're, as a student, you have a bedsit, you don't need a dining area. It's not part of the controls. I am not sure that we have the equivalent in Jersey, but I am certain that if we needed it, if we decided to allow it as a special condition, we would be able to do it very, very quickly, especially because we would only have to copy what the UK is doing. I don't think we should look at this as a temporary measure, and that's a place where I diverge from the Deputy of Trinity. I don't see a field being taken over and a field with little cubicles for a very simple reason, is that it doesn't prevent you from having to do water access, electricity, sewage, road access. Everything else needs to be done as if you are building for good. So why wouldn't you be building for good? The other thing, of course, is that it would have to be a green site again, and I think we ran out of those during the island plan. It would be a much better idea to look at office buildings. We have a surplus of those. There's a few that do not have a future as office buildings, and that could be converted. They might not be large enough, but there are possibilities there. If we can ensure that building regulations mean that the accommodation is sufficient but not extravagant, and that the price is brought down, of course, if qualifications follow. One last thing about these. So the idea is, of course, make them long-term. And one idea behind this is that when we wean ourselves of temporary workers, of seasonal workers, we can look at students. Because it's something that we have looked very, very seriously at in Jersey. We'd love to have a university in Jersey. Gibraltar, much smaller than us, has a university. It's doing extremely well. So it's a lovely thing to have. And if you want to talk, and we'll talk later about technology and the development of sciences, to have your own school really, really helps in that. Our number one problem, and number one, beyond every other, is that there's no accommodation for students. We have 20 master students in Jersey doing extremely well. The course is going well. They adore the place. They find lots of things to do. There's a lot of research to do in Jersey. They don't know where to live. They have no idea where to live. So they can use holiday accommodations during the winter, but those are more and more difficult to find. As soon as we reach this season, it's over. You cannot find a place to put a student in Jersey. And if we look again over the next 15 years, to have something like that would allow us to think about a university with much, much more chances of achieving that. So all this to say that the project, the temporary project, is not going to work, but it doesn't mean that we should forget about the problem. It's a problem that exists and that we need to solve, definitely. So please vote no for A, B, and C, and vote yes for D, because we absolutely, the next government will absolutely have to find a solution for this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Senator Valois.
Thank you, sir. I really stand to speak to ask a few questions of the proposer, and I'm hoping that I will get some answers. Nowhere in the report can I see why he determines that it should only be between 200 and 500 temporary workers. So I'd like to understand why that number and what that means in terms of how it will support the solution that he's trying to assist businesses and our economy with in the island. I go on to the report, sir, where he references the potential rental for the temporary accommodation. He states, my research suggests that reasonable means £800 per month. Now, I have some questions around this in particular because understanding our minimum wage regulations that we have, there is an ability for business or owners, employers, to offset weekly an amount of money from a minimum wage. It's about £91.12 per week. And I did some quick calculations before lunch, and I worked out, say for example, 48 hours on minimum wage, you're looking roughly £370 per week if that's for the 52 weeks of the year, roughly over 19,000 for that year. So then looking at how much would be taken off if you were using that weekly offset would be about 4,700. But then if you were to add on the and this is where the question comes, is adding on the £800 to that would also take 9,600 off. And I suppose the question is one of affordability for the temporary workers. Is £4,839 sufficient? And that's just a rough calculation. I'm not suggesting everyone will be on that, or it's those hours that they work, or it's that minimum wage. But it's just a rough calculation to get an idea of affordability, because if you take all of that into account and you work that out over the year, that means they will have roughly £93 per week. And so I asked the question, does he believe that's affordable? And if so, why? And one other question I had was whether the temporary workers' accommodation would have to commit to ensuring they meet the required standards of things like the rented dwellings law. And in his report, he also refers to a potential site, which I'm going to speak on behalf of our beloved Constable Le Sueur Renard of St Saviour, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, who would probably have stood up and told him off for putting Dautrey in this proposition, because we have fought for a very long time to keep that for educational purposes. And so I'm going to raise the issue, and it has been raised historically, and hence the reason why we've protected it through the Island Plan as an education site. And quite rightly, as Deputy Guida referred to, is, you know, having university or university accommodation and what that may or may not look like. We have a huge opportunity with that site, Dautrey and the Highland site, to provide really good alternative opportunities for further and higher education in that area. And if you actually look around the whole area in terms of the quarry site and what we could put in, and have the vision to do so, which would be really exciting, and have a solution for that, I think that would be helpful, but it'll be a long time coming. So I'm not trying to offer that up as a solution. But my concern around the Dautrey site, if that was to be an area considered for temporary worker accommodation, is one of safeguarding. Because it is very much used not just for further education and higher education purposes, but we have a special educational site on there in Le Centre for our younger children who have particular behavioural issues that need to be properly supported in that area. So for me, it's understanding whereabouts in Dautrey site and whether actually that is the right site to have in the proposition as a suggestion. It's not in the proposition, it's in the report. I'm not going to go over many of the arguments that other members have made. I am very uneasy about the proposition. I will admit I am extremely uneasy about the proposition, but I do get the arguments about needing to support our economy and how that works going forward. I hope whoever's elected and comes in next has all the right solutions and answers for everybody. It's not an easy one to crack, I have to admit, sir, and that's probably why we are where we are. But you know, I appreciate the Deputy actually bringing it forward. It's given us the opportunity to have this conversation and seek other solutions. I just hope that actually, instead of doing more reviews and more reports and you know, having more meetings discussing exactly the same things, that things just actually start getting done. So I understand where the deputy's coming from, but I would really appreciate some answers to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator, the Conitaba Trinity.
Thank you, sir. I was encouraged to hear the Deputy of St Peter's say that he would be taking Part D separately because, like many other speakers, I'm afraid it's the only part of this proposition that I find in any way acceptable. Yes, I'm sure we all speak to people around and about and we can identify that there is a problem with nobody having sufficient labour to run their business. But unfortunately, this, I don't believe, is the solution. Jersey is no longer the honeypot that it used to be decades ago when transient labourer would turn up here with their tool bag, when there was cheap beer, cheap cigarettes and entertainment on every night, and they could put up with the fact they'd have to live in second-rate accommodation. Jersey is expensive now, and as I say, this is not going to be the solution. It also worries me that the locations that were originally suggested have perhaps slipped away more towards brownfield sites. But irrespective of that, there's going to be a massive investment required to deliver this project in putting in the infrastructure that will be necessary in the electricity, the drainage, the roads and services. And to see that that's going to be recouped over a 3-year period, I find really difficult to accept, apart from the cost of actually shipping these units here. There's so much fixed cost going to be on the clock that we know that at the end of 3 years or the approach to 3 years, that what was a temporary solution is going to be needed to be extended. And that's really coming to the next point really, which is that we've spent the last 2 weeks debating an interim island plan. And if we were going to talk about something as serious as this, that was the format in which that debate should have been had. So I'm afraid, sir, with those comments, I'll leave it and say that unfortunately I can't support this other than Part D. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Morell? No? Any other member wish to speak on the proposition?
I'm in the chat, sir.
Conitaba St Clements. Sorry, did you?
Sir, I wasn't immediately ready to speak on this because I thought this would have been done and dusted before my return. And whilst I realise that I will have to abstain from the vote because of my obvious ties to hospitality, I need to support my hospitality colleagues in their endeavour to find accommodation of worth to help them go forward this season and in future seasons. Across the island, we are short-staffed because of the cost of living, cost of accommodation, etc., etc. We're coming out from the shadows of COVID with a hospitality industry that has suffered hugely and has been supported, I grant you, well from the Economic Development Ministry. But we're pulling our hair out to try and find accommodation for people who want to come back in. And we're probably operating around 75% at the moment. Cafes are not upstaffed to 100%, nor are hotels. Occupancy going forward is going to be low this season because people are still a little bit apprehensive about coming over here. I do need to say that whilst you may not be minded to vote for A, B and C, D is a necessity going forward. I realise that a quick fix is not the greatest solution, but I do think we should look at what we've got at the moment in the form of the regulations that we have that cover lodging houses and houses for sale in relevant locations close to major hospitality hubs. And I think that if, for example, the Constable of St Brelags wants to protect the hotels in St Brelags Bay, we must make sure that they are viable. Viability doesn't just exist in profit. It means that we project through to the future. And I think in my mind, hotels in hubs like Gorey, St Albans, St Helier and St Brelags will thrive for the next 20, 25, 30 years, and the whole hospitality industry will re-evolve. It will be like a little phoenix. It will change drastically. We're already changing. we are already paying more money. We started a couple of years ago in our organisation uplifting the pay that we pay our workers, and our workers are now on at least the minimum of the living wage, and we'll take that further forward. But the cost of living of accommodation is unreachable at the moment. For our own small organisation, we have a 111-bed hotel which we rent in Roseville Street. We're having to accommodate our seasonal staff in hotel bedrooms. So there's no income from those bedrooms. So I have to point out as well that with regard to income, what you're losing with the numbers of staff that aren't coming over at the moment, you're losing tax, you're losing extra social security, and you're losing their spend on the high street. Those are the things that you're losing. So we reacted very quickly to COVID, and I won't bring a relationship between the Nightingale Hospital and staff accommodation. That would be too crass. However, it is a problem that needs to be addressed now, as was the Nightingale Hospital, the need to provide a precautionary measure against the numbers in hospital rising. So I would say that if you are not minded to speak for A, B and C, I won't be able to vote on D, but we need something going forward. So I would attempt to use and maybe address the regulations that currently govern housing in Jersey, particularly in those hubs. Maybe use that. But certainly going forward, we need some good quality accommodation from now well into the future. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Martin.
Thank you, sir. Yes, this is an awkward one. I've been listening to all the different speeches. We are absolutely desperate to have accommodation for seasonal workers. We enjoy our beautiful hotels that have been lovely restaurants, and that's our quality of life, and we need to find a solution. Now, I don't know if we've done something to the market, so I was asked this to ask the ministers. And when I came to Jersey 37 years ago, I got lodgings in an ordinary house. There was 3 of us lodging there. We all had our own room. I actually was sharing with my young child, but the house was beautiful and clean, shared bathroom. It worked. It is what it is. But most of the other lodgers did work in catering, and so they got meals as well. And because I had a child, the lady let me use the kitchen after they'd finished. But I thought, what's happened? Have we done something, sir? Have we put the tax up so much? I know we actually changed the 5 lodgers rule, because if you had a 7-bedroom house, you could have still only have 5 people other than your family. But we've done away with that, so we could have more. And then we had the Ukrainian crisis, and with local people have been coming forward, and they do have rooms. At the moment, we're not taking any more Ukrainian people, but I'm wondering where these rooms have been, and what's the resistance to doing what we used to do and renting to, the lovely people who are coming here seasonal. Slightly different, I know, but the question I'm asking is, have we done something? Are we taxing too much? Have we put too many regulations in? Because if you are working in a nice restaurant or bar that sells food, nice clean bed is what you want at the end of your shift, maybe with a TV in, even kettle, microwave possibly. You don't actually need full cooking if you're going to get a nice meal or a meal at work. So I'm like this. I think I have to support. I'm listening to the industry. I don't know where it will take us, but I think we need to try and make sure we're using, like we did yesterday, we discovered we've got empty homes. We want those for locals, permanent. We need to try and get on board everybody. When we had Battle, sir, locals you could go down tourism, the tourism board, and you'd find a whole host of families that were willing to put an amount of people up for over those 8 to 10 weeks. Are we really doing everything, or have we changed so much that we've put all different obstacles in the way of the people who are trying to do this? I just put that out there, sir, because I thought we had opened up the market when we've allowed people to have more than 5 lodgers. I understood who started the conversation. Oh, Deputy Dubler, about, you know, it doesn't look human. Or you think about, you know, I've got family who go and work on a cruise ship. You want to see where they live, but they make very good money out of it. They don't spend a penny. And actually, some of them have bought some very nice houses, living in some very tight accommodation, but they're very young and that's their choice. So I think we do have to be a bit flexible. We're not forcing anyone to come, and we're certainly not forcing anyone to live anywhere. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputies. David Lewis.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm currently Deputy for St Saviour number 2, Sulia-Glees, and this part here with Dotre forms part of my constituency, which I know very well. As Senator Valois has pointed out, this is an education facility, and I know that many children and young students use this as a way home, and it would be totally unsuitable to have temporary accommodation built in that particular area. It does say there's 7,500 square meters of space there, and that it is temporary, but things that are temporary have got a habit of becoming permanent. And there's no way I can support this, sir, but I may be tempted to support D, sir. Just asking the Minister for Housing to investigate more sites. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Creville.
Thank you, sir. I've got every sympathy for the hospitality industry because I know very well that they are struggling to get staff, as are other industries, retail and agriculture and the like, even finance. But frankly, I despair when I hear things like the new Premier Inn was built without a facility of providing accommodation for their staff. Historically, hotels have always provided accommodation for their staff. So, you know, the fact that they are now bemoaning that they can't find staff to work in their hotels, I just despair. But that is something that we have got to look at. It's our planning policies, surely, rather than trying to find other solutions like this particular solution. Well, I don't believe it is a solution. Temporary accommodation in what is that going to comprise of? Sort of caravans and fields, temporary for how long? As the Constable for Trinity alluded to, we have, who's going to provide the drains, the infrastructure, the water? And seriously, that's going to be provided for 3 years? No, it's not. It's not temporary. So, and I don't want to see these ghettos constructed in various places around the island, because that's what they will become. We need to look at things. We need to look at why we're not attracting staff. Is it double taxation treaties? Don't we have enough double taxation treaties with certain countries? We should be paying the living wage. It's been difficult during the pandemic and lockdown, and as industry gets back up on its feet, but now surely is the time to pay the living wage. So industry that is not doing so needs to look to themselves, really. But we have to look for a solution that I have voiced among various quarters, the Housing Minister and others, for a while now, is something like a cruise ship. I attended a conference in Gibraltar a few years ago, CPA conference. Obviously, Gibraltar doesn't have the accommodation to accommodate huge amounts of conferences and the likes, so they have a cruise ship in their harbour, docked in their harbour. And it's beautiful, and it provides accommodation, all en suite, however many rooms, 700 rooms. It provides a dining room, a bar, obviously a conference conference facilities. It has amenity space. So I would like us to look at probably more innovative solutions than building ghettos around the island. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition?
Yes.
Senator Farnham?
Thank you, sir. Just for the record, sir, I would remind members I do have a connection with a hospitality business, so it's all duly recorded on my declaration of interests. And members might well remember on occasion in recent past where Visit Jersey have put out infographics demonstrating the impact, the positive impact on tourism, on not just the island's economy, sir, but our way of life, on our culture. And it shows how the thread of tourism runs through just about and benefits just about everything we do. The same, of course, applies to other sectors of our economy. So, in fact, most sectors of our economy, including agriculture and retail, and, of course, health and many other sectors, all of which, by the way, are desperately short or are going to be desperately short of key worker accommodation. And when we refer to key worker accommodation now, I think it can be taken as said that the days are gone where we have to rely on single rooms and bed sits for our key workers and essentially employed people. And of course there are some good ways, some quick wins for the island and for the various industries that need to accommodate their staff in good quality accommodation. And as I think Deputy Martin and the Councillor of St John alluded to, in relation to better utilisation of our housing stock, so where islanders and householders can take people in, they seem to be embracing the Airbnb type situation. Why can they not do that, sir, to help transient workers who come and spend a short period of time in the island? Of course, I know Deputy of St Peter's had a bit of a rough ride here, but I would like to praise him for trying to find a solution. I don't think he's presented the right solutions, but he's having a go. He's listening to the industry, and I and my officer, sir, and assistant ministers spend a lot of our time talking to the sectors we represent and are acutely aware of the challenges, and those are challenges that are going to have to be resolved. Now, in an idealistic world, we'd say we need an answer, a solution now. But in reality, sir, that's impossible. We can't find a quick solution to this, because what we all want to do is ensure that we can amend our regulations, our standards, rules and laws, so to ensure that we can provide more realistic key worker accommodation, importantly without compromising standards. That is essential. Without compromising standards, and of course without compounding the pressure on the local housing market. And that is something that's going to take a little bit more time and thought. I believe the industry, sir, that are affected will be able to get through this. They'll be able to hold the line until we get there. We've seen some great examples of businesses coming forward with very innovative ideas to solve this. Some of them, of course, we're not too keen on supporting for reasons I won't repeat, sir, but they should be commended for trying to find a solution. In relation to paragraph B, which specifically refers to me, sir, my department, and I would refer members to the Council of Ministers' comments already presented. But of course, we will continue to work closely to talk to businesses, my assistant ministers and I, while we're still in office, and listen to them, not just in tourism, but all sectors of the economy, and try and seek out with our officers solutions wherever we can, sir. So regrettably, I will not be supporting paragraphs A to C, but certainly will support paragraph D, sir, and undertake with other ministers to make sure we get cracking on that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir, and I apologise for not being here earlier. I was on State's business at the time. Thank you, Deputy Hewlin, or Deputy St Peter, for bringing this, because I think I heard Senator Farnham say, you know, it is to be applauded that you are trying, or that the Deputy is trying to find a solution to what all of us who speak to anyone in business, in any area, hospitality, retail, financial services, it really doesn't matter. There is a shortage of staff, and it is massively affecting the business sector, which means that it's affecting our economy, which means it's affecting the services we can deliver. It's a huge knock-on effect. I feel similarly to, the disappointing part is I feel similarly to many other speakers in that, unfortunately, I don't feel that, you know, whilst on paper to say this is a temporary solution for 3 years, therefore, you know, like the Nightingale Hospital, we can set the planning law aside for the time. I would have to, because this problem isn't going to go away quickly, I feel that it's very likely the problem will still be there in 3 years' time to some extent. And so if we were to build this accommodation in 3 years' time, I have a funny feeling the states would be sitting to say, let's extend this for another 3 years, and then another 3 years. And something which is temporary could then very quickly become actually rather permanent, which is why setting aside the planning and building law for me is not really an option, because I think this is likely to be needed on a more permanent basis. In addition to that, I think it's not advisable, in my view, when bringing propositions such as this, to have it so specifically focused on particular individuals to take up particular roles to deliver this. And I understand the reason for that is because it's a, in inverted commas, ready-made solution. But I think it is difficult to say this person will chair it, this person will deliver it, because you know, we as the states do have to think in terms of, well, would there be another person who may deliver it better, who may be better equipped to do this job? It's not possible for us as an assembly to see here that this is necessarily actually the best way forward in terms of the supplier of the accommodation and even the site of where it's going to be. And so for those reasons, I think the overly specific nature of who's delivering this, plus the setting aside of the planning and building law, I think it is not possible for me to support parts A to C. Part D, yes, I feel entirely comfortable with. If I was to amend Part D now, it would actually say take away the longer term solutions, because I think by rejecting A to C, we're still in the need for a short-term solution. So actually Part D needs to be amended really to be short and longer term solutions, because it appears that the Assembly will be going that way. Deputy St Peter has identified a critical problem for the island right now. He has brought a solution. I don't think this is necessarily the right way to provide that solution, but I think it is, for what it is worth, and I know every business owner in the islands will just think it's words, but they are words, is that I and others in this Assembly do understand the problem, and that there is the problem, and we do want to help solve it. Just don't believe that this is the right way forward, sir. And so for that reason, I, like others, won't be voting for parts A to C. But I apologise to Deputy St Peter, because he has been bold, and that is to be applauded. And I think that, you know, perhaps sometimes we all need to be a bit bolder in that respect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Pamplin.
Thank you, sir. I will be brief, not to add to my colleague to my left of me's notes as he spreads himself across my lap, so to speak. Figuratively speaking, of course, sir. Oh, that woke everybody up. Sir, I just wanted to add to the sentiments that's been, and applaud him for bringing that, but actually to highlight a further issue which I don't think has been spoken so much. We've heard a lot about, quite rightly, hospitality and business, but I want to talk about carers and again, I have to reference our recent review into mental health services, where our recruitment of specialist people coming to the island to transfer while they embed themselves into the island way of life is becoming a very critical situation. We need specialist staff. We need people here to help train our local people to stay in these areas as well. And I think the point that has been skirted around is the pandemic was the great equalizer, where the phrases, if you remember, this is happening to all of us and it's all equal. But actually what it threw up was actually it hits people harder. And actually what we discovered that the people at the bottom end and the people that we stood out and applauded and praised, key workers, shop workers, people who are maybe we took for granted for many years on this island as we grappled with problems of population and migration and accommodation, coupled with our own problems in terms of housing and accommodation. And I think of my 20-year-old son in college in London in his accommodation, which Deputy Ash was quite right earlier to highlight, but how am I going to get him back here so he can pay off his student debt and contribute back to this home? So these are all pertinent issues. But on our recent visit to the Clinic Penel site with the Minister for Infrastructure, we met with the contractor on site, which was very, very helpful because he gave us a true reflection, warts and all, of the problem his industry is facing, that to build an inpatient mental health facility, that's not just popping up a new building. It needs to be done right. You need the specialism to build that, and he cannot. The contractor was struggling to find the people, those skills to come to the island. He found somebody, but he couldn't house them. And this is the issue that we have to recognise, and I just wanted to raise those because I don't think that was as strongly proven. We have to now refocus this pandemic and everything else in between, from Brexit to the rising costs of inflation and the situation in Ukraine. All these things have happened together for a reason, and it's forced us as an island to say we cannot no longer continue the ways of the past. We have to work together as 49 states members, as an island, for everybody. And I just wanted to add that, and sorry to add to your questions to the list. Did the Deputy have any conversations with his counterparts in Guernsey? Because I think this is also a Channel Island issue, and it's one of those areas where we as the Channel Islands could be working more closely together. Yes, we're different, but I think we've got the same challenges. So I'd be curious to see if in these discussions this was discussed, if they were doing something similar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Just point a couple of things out. It's been quite interesting debate, and we've seen some remarkable things. Deputy Guida softening his approach was lovely to see. I've even seen Deputy Southern use 2 laptops at the same time and refer to the place, this chamber, as the chamber twice, sir. And I think what a step forward this has been, this debate. It's been remarkable. However, I have to say, I can't support this. And if I'm frank, I can't support Part D either. And there's a specific reason why, and I'll start with that. Part D is to request the Council of Ministers to establish a departmental investigation, yada, yada, yada. The Council of Ministers have been in power for 4 years. They've produced a population policy. They've looked at all of this and suddenly have realised, oh dear, we have a problem with temporary accommodation and with the hospitality industry. But a member of that assembly who has been quite vocal in his work and lobbied for particular groups, directly with a direct ear of the Council of Ministers, has suddenly thought, oh, I know, I'll bring a proposition to say, let's do something about temporary accommodation. I'm sorry, sir, but this has been occurring for a long time. There's nothing in here, for example, about taking the talent we have on Ireland and funding things such as Highlands College that run hospitality courses and catering courses and train local people to do those courses, and doing something about what we're paying those people while they're trying to train so that they can actually live where they're trying to train or retrain. That's where some of the gaps are on this island that have not been addressed by the Council of Ministers because they've had the wrong priorities. But suddenly we are, and I've looked, sir, at the websites that were on this page. This accommodation, and it's interesting when you go to the first one, there's an accommodation tab and a housing tab. But this takes you to the accommodation tab. This is not housing. It's not fit for decent housing for people. These are tiny rooms built in what are effectively containers. Now, this is where we are in developed Jersey. Let's just think about this in this assembly. This is where we are. We want to import staff to work at minimum wage, and they're lucky to get the minimum wage, and employers who pay it can laud themselves that we pay the minimum wage, which I just worked out, and unfortunately just closed my calculator down, which is about £16,653 a year if you get minimum wage for 35 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. Don't actually think you will be paying tax on that, so contributing to our tax, or just about paying tax on that. And as for expendable income after you paid for everything else, I'm not so sure. This, sir, is unfortunately the worst side of Jersey. This is the side of Jersey that doesn't value people and thinks that human beings are just commodities to be shipped around, almost literally in a shipping container, and live in a shipping container in order that we may be able to service our industries. There are better ways. And if the government really wanted to support this, which indeed it should be supporting, there are ways to do this. They involve long-term education, short-term education, skilling of people, changing our social security system so that you don't have to be up to the age of 25 in order to move out of home because it's almost impossible to live. Things such as providing absolutely some sort of encouragement for people to rent out if they have a large home. There's quite a few large buildings on this island, sir. Some of them owned by the states and under-occupied, in my opinion. Perhaps they should be used. But we've got to ourselves to a step where we're sat here today talking about temporary, which won't be temporary, and I completely agree, and I know we don't agree on perhaps a lot, but the Deputy Agreement, I absolutely agree with you, it won't be temporary. You're absolutely right. It will be there, and they will become, eyesores is the word, long-term, which will degrade in standard over time, but then they become a necessity. And this is what happens, and this is the gradual shift. The gradual shift happens, sir, so that this necessity has worked for the first few years, so why are we getting rid of it? And it will be very difficult because our industries will become reliant upon that mode and that model of accommodation. It's your classic slippery slope. And actually, I don't think this is the right thing to do for many, many reasons. I agree with Deputy Doublé that this is about people's lives, and we cannot have, what are we going to have? A Jersey's own version of a caste system? You can live in this accommodation and come and serve us and be grateful that you've got it. It's quite, is it Edwardian? My history isn't great. It might be Victorian or Edwardian. I think it's Edwardian in its approach, sir. And I can't agree with that. The sadness is that the Council of Ministers has not addressed this issue because we knew about it years ago. We knew about our lack of training, our lack of skilling up our own workforce years ago. And that's what the hospitality industry needs. And they will encourage that and they will support that, and they do support that. And that's what we need to do, to turn those jobs into a well-paid, well-skilled, long-term, genuine choice for our young people and for people who come over here so that the quality of what we had is high. That does not mean importing workers to live in substandard accommodation. This is fundamentally and morally wrong. And I urge people to reject all parts of this because we don't need another committee set up to look at this. It's the Council of Ministers' job in the new Assembly to solve this problem as quickly as it possibly can in a similar way that we reacted to COVID. We need an emergency action. We need a new deal for Jersey, and some of us are quite willing to provide that. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, Deputy Sutton.
Sir, I have spoken in this debate, but I did ask that the Chief Minister or the Housing Minister make some contribution to it. And I noticed that they're not prepared to.
I'm sorry, Deputy, that does amount to second speech, and it's entirely a matter for them whether they wish to contribute to that. Yes. Very well, if no other member wishes to speak on the proposition, then I close the debate and call upon the Deputy of St Peter to respond.
Thank you, sir. And I thank all 23 people who have spoken. Well, 22, but one was a second speech. And what I've learned from that is we raised an issue, a really serious issue that was discussed. Now, take it or leave it, whether you like the idea or not. The most important thing was it was an idea. And what it offered, and few ideas are perfect. I've heard ideas supporting the principle, but I haven't heard any solutions. I need to take my breath out because I don't think I've had a kicking like this since my rugby days, but I enjoyed my rugby days. What I was trying to do, and I still believe is the right thing, is to give freedom to businesses to be creative and develop maybe a better research solution. A lot of people have been talking about what's downstream. Well, downstream is downstream. It's great. It's downstream. It's fantastic. I put Part D in specifically over a 3-year period so that we would do something about the short term. So anybody who has mentioned the fact that it'll hang around, I don't want a temporary solution to hang around after 3, maybe a couple of months later, years. I want the permanent solution. Now, in my former days, when I used to occasionally get a train into Waterloo, wake up the Londoners, as you go through Vauxhall Station on the right-hand side, there's a big sandstone building that I watched being developed at the back end of 2006, 7, 8, 9, I can't remember when. And I was always curious about what that was. And it transpired it was really, really smart student accommodation. And I'm not talking about some of the student accommodation that we're all referencing that I know some of my kids endured. Very clean, very tidy, spacious bed sits with amenity spaces around, well managed, well cleaned, everything else. That's what I sort of have in mind for the long-term solution for those people who need to work here on a temporary or even longer basis. No, they wouldn't be homes when you had battened down your hatches. And somebody mentioned the fact that, I think it was Deputy Martin, who knows people working on cruise ships. Not ideal for many months of the year, but earn a very good living and have a fantastic experience. And I think she mentioned they come home and buy their own home as a result of that. What is wrong with that? I like Deputy Doublet's pun on the box, very good. The Deputy Alves asking about lodging houses being re-registered. Lodging houses are being sold for two reasons. They're really hard to manage. I'm sorry, Deputy Guida mentioned it, and that's why a lot of them have been sold. The regulations are great, which could be good news, but it takes away the benefit of owning them and the work and the burden of doing them. And if you've got one with heritage in at all, you will be selling it as soon as you can. It's impossible to make good, to fit within the standards that are being expected. Should they be deregistered? That's another debate altogether. But there is a trend of losing the non-quals as the old status was concerned, from 800 down to 200. Declaration of interest, I sold my lodging house. Thank you, Deputy Ash, for his support. I'll come back to Deputy Young at the end. Yeah, clearly, blatant electioneering. And I think I can say that along with 22 other people who've spoken today. The tongue-in-cheek, please. Senator Moore and others, I am totally supportive of MMC, flatback, call it whatever you wish. The modern methods of construction are essential going forwards. And yes, they can be better, faster, cheaper, sustainable, and I'm totally behind that. But that is not necessarily for now, but so will play such an urgent part, and a desperately good part in our future going forwards. Modular? Yeah, the Constable of St John, who gave me a bit of a shooing to do with regulations. Well, I just pushed one back at him to say any home can take up to 4 people as a temporary lodger, or a lodger, but there's absolutely no regulations and no minimum standard support for those particular tenants. So whilst in principle, I think it's a very good idea, I believe if the housing minister was here, his new residential tenancy laws will be addressing that and bringing it on parity. But today, I would be kicked even more for mentioning that because there are no regulations and controls that go with that. Along with Deputy Guida, I'm going to be saying I struggle to disagree with anything that, well, not anything, most things that Deputy Sutherland and Deputy Tadia said. I think one of the things I want to point out is I'd make it absolutely clear in all the work I've been doing on the population policy is that we have moved from a buyer's market for staff to a seller's market, an absolute paradigm shift. And gone are the days, and I've referenced it in the past, when we had plentiful supply of Breton workers just over the water, very, very happy with the disconnect in our economies to come and earn good seasonal money. That has changed. We have got to be the best in the world in selling and providing a fantastic symbiotic service for those people that we can encourage, and I mean encourage and persuade to come and work with us and support these particular industries. In return for them, and I'm absolutely strong on this one, in return for them, they must go home with a lot of money in their back pocket as a result of doing that, and they must be appreciated and they must be respected. And that, while we have to rely on people coming to our shores, that I will not stand down from, and I totally agree with that. Maybe we need the idea of a bridge to France, because that would solve a lot of our problems, but that's another idea altogether. I'm going to sprint through a bit, because I think most people... Right. 2 to 500. Why 2 to 500? That was the numbers that are given to me as an entry level. I think we need about 1,000. The 200, by the way, is the approximate space. When I started on this, it started on the bunker bins. The thinking has evolved as we've gone forward since this was lodged. And I've moved on to any other creative ideas, office buildings, anything else. But the 200 was what Bunker Bin said they could put on 7,500 square meters. And that is the size of Goat Tray. So that was a link in for the two things there. That is just an example of a size that is tangible and I could pace out as opposed to any other. Why 800 quid? If we were to have 200 from the bunker bin proposition which was submitted, that came to a cost of shipping, installing, decommissioning, taking away, servicing, having management around there as well. And I think about £500,000 for infrastructure. Whether that's enough or not, I did it on the back of a fag packet. That came to 800 quid a month, okay? Now, the most important thing is that might be too much money. But what we have now is a lot of the small businesses are going out and renting in the market for 1,200 quid a month, and they are subsidising their particular staff wages down to what is the right amount of money for that individual to make it worth their while working for them. So I would expect that to be subsidised by, I don't know, not up to me to say what the business is, 100, 200, 300, 400 quid a month in order to make it right so those people coming over here return with the money that they would expect. Yeah, cruise ship. I looked into cruise ships. The size of cruise ship you would require would struggle to fit within the harbour over here. And also, if you had it moored out, you've got a problem with the tenders going to and from. And if you've got tenders going to and from, people in hospitality and all industries start and finish work at different times. It just wouldn't be viable. But I did look into it, and I'd support it if somebody can make that particular model work. But it's a really, I mean, a great idea, and it does make a lot of sense. I've done that. Yeah, I mean, Deputy Morell, you know, I asked somebody in business if they would step up and run this particular project. Somebody did. It needs somebody to drive it. This isn't a government project. This is an industry project looking for to put together, pull people together to come to government and ask. knowing that, that there's more likely chance of success. And I thank you, Deputy Pamplin, for bringing the reference to the construction. Guernsey, thank you for pointing out Guernsey. I see it in the papers. They're having a debate at the moment about temporary accommodation for exactly the same reason. But they're discussing whether to put it on a green field or whether to put it on some land behind the hospital. I'm not sure what. Yeah, I mean, I thank everybody and thank the support from those people within business industry. I have absolutely no regret bringing this. It's unearthed a fantastic debate. It's really brought it to the attention of the issue and the problem that we have. Whether it's the right solution or not, that is obviously what we're debating about. And to be honest with you, I'm not worried either way. As long as we start the process today in solving this absolute critical problem. Now, why does business need this? And this will be my final summary. It's time, cost and risk. If you're in business and you're going to invest your time and you're going to invest your risk, your time and your money, you need to assess the risk. Currently, as it stands, it's very difficult to ask people in business to come forward with a solution like this, which will cost money, eat up an enormous amount of their time when they've got other pressures, and the risk of success is very low. This proposition would would mean for them the time and the cost to deliver it, but significantly reduce the risk of failure. This, hopefully, is the beginning of the fix. And with that, I move the proposition. And if I can ask for A, B, and C to be taken, and yes. I have a personal goal to achieve there, and then D. Thank you, sir.
A, B, C, and then D. Yes. So A, B, C taken as a group, and then D as a separate position. Very well. You call for the appel, therefore. The vote is on A, B, and C of the proposition. I ask the greffier to open the voting, and I ask members participating remotely to indicate their vote in the usual way. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. Paragraphs A, B, and C have been defeated. 4 votes pour, 40 votes contre, and 1 abstention.
Have the floor.
4.
The votes pour were the Constable of St Mary, Deputies Ash and St Peter, and Martin.
Very well. We now vote on paragraph D. And again, I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, I ask the greffier to close the voting.
False happens.
Paragraph D has been adopted. 32 votes pour, 9 votes contre, 1 abstention. The 9 is called for.
The votes contra were Senator Mezek, Deputies Southern, Tadia Lahegre, I, Pershard, Ward and Alves, and also the Deputy of St John.
Most people won't have access to the chat, but in the chat earlier in the day, Senator Ferguson indicated a desire to ask the Assembly to permit her to take P70 as the next item of business. She has medical appointments, so she indicates, and will not be available to deal with the matter when it might otherwise fall to be done. So, Senator Ferguson, do you wish to make that proposition?
Yes, please, sir.
Is there
I
anything?
would be grateful if the Assembly would permit me to take P70 now.
P70 is suspension of drive to net zero.
Yes.
I'll second that, sir.
That's seconded. Does anyone wish to speak on that proposition? In which case, I will take it on a standing vote. Those in favour, kindly show. Those against? Yes, Senator, we can deal with it as the next item of business.
Thank you, sir, and thank you to the Assembly.
Very well. The next item of business is suspension of drive to net zero, P70, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
States has to decide whether of opinion to refer to their Act dated 26 February 2020, in which they adopted the defining principles for the carbon neutral strategy. And in view of the uncertainty surrounding fuel costs following the United Kingdom's decision to stop buying Russian oil and gas, and the impact of any subsequent rise in costs of these supplies and the effects on lower income families, middle earners and local businesses, to request the Government of Jersey to suspend the drive to net zero until the war in Ukraine and the uncertainty are resolved.
Senator.
Thank you, sir. In question time on Monday, we heard about the increasing number of islanders having to resort to the use of food banks. It would be totally irresponsible of us to impose significant costs onto lower and middle income families whilst the overall cost of living is rocketing so dramatically. We would be reducing islanders to penury. Is this really how we want to treat islanders? There is a limit to the amount of additional taxation we can inflict on people in a time of rapidly increasing costs. At this point, we do need to have an intelligent analysis of the cost of the carbon neutral policies which are recommended to be imposed. In the recommendations, the public are expected to insulate their houses within 3 years. They are expected to buy an electric car within 4 years and to invest in a low carbon heating system within 4.5 years. Insulation of older and very old houses is expensive, and for very old houses is often barely possible. We have seen the difficulty and expense of adding double glazing on old houses. As for cars, low and middle income families tend to use second-hand cars, and few will be able to afford an electric car, particularly if they're already relying on food banks. One of the problems of the low carbon heating system, in other words, an air or ground source heating system, is that they are very inefficient. For a start, the running cost is around some £1,250 a year, as opposed to £984 for a gas boiler, about some 27% more expensive. We do have a problem in that gas is now a strategic weapon until the UK initiates fracking and North Sea gas. If you read the letters in the Evening Post, you may have noticed the letter from the lady who installed an air source heating system. With such a system, it apparently operates at about 15 degrees centigrade. Our aging population is not comfortable at this level, preferring 20 to 22 degrees centigrade. This lady pointed out that her system would only run at a constant low level, and the family was sitting round in overcoats to keep warm. So she tore out the heat source system and reverted to oil. Many new houses do not have fireplaces and have electric heating only, which means that costs will depend on the base cost of electricity. It is doubtful whether the existing grid will carry the load required for the increased demand for heating as well as demand for car charging. The UK reckoned that they will need to increase the electricity supply by 67% to maintain transport, with significant capital costs. And if heat is to be provided by radiant heaters, the UK reckon they will need a grid 4 times as large just to keep the homes and offices warm. So that overall, the grid will need to be 2.7 times the present size for heat and transport. The UK recently ran a pilot programme to estimate the costs and effectiveness of an insulation programme. It required an average expenditure of £85,000 per house, but the emission reduction achieved was 60%, with only 3 dwellings achieving 80% and 3 dwellings not even achieving 30%. We have some 45,000 dwellings in the island, according to the census, so scaling up linearly means a cost of around about 4 billion. It will be necessary to rewire houses, street distribution and substations. Mains wiring will need upgrading and substations will actually need extending. This will add to the cost of electricity. It's expected to cost around about 700 billion in the UK, and it will no doubt cost a significant amount over here. All our transmission lines are underground, so changing these will be a major programme. Again, the UK is estimating 200 billion, but their transmission lines are overhead, and this could well be cheaper. But it'll be another capital cost, increasing the price of electricity. And no doubt we shall have an increase in the price of electricity coming from France as well. The calculations for the UK estimate that including air, rail and sea transport and agriculture will cost in the region of £180,000 per household. Okay, there is an element of double counting from having zero carbon houses and zero carbon electricity. However, on a conservative basis, the total is undoubtedly greater than 100,000 a year. The estimates for the UK are higher than the amount the United States spent on the entire Second World War. Again, the resources required will be substantial. Bear in mind that we are finding it difficult to find accommodation for essential workers. We just had a debate on that. And indeed to find essential key workers. The UK will require an additional 42,000 professional electrical engineers and some 130,000 skilled people, these all to be employed full-time. To cover retrofitting of equipment will additionally require about 500,000 workers. Given that there are 38,000 professional electrical engineers currently in the UK, gives some idea of the magnitude of the problem of getting the skilled staff. If we look at materials, the UK alone will require 207 tonnes of cobalt, which is double the current annual global production. They will require 264 tonnes of lithium carbonate, which is 3/4 of the current world production. There will be 7,200 tonnes of neodymium and dysprosium, which is almost the total world production of neodymium, rare earth elements absolutely essential for the development of batteries and chips, and also 2.3 thousand tons of copper, which is over a sixth of world production. To go all electric, the UK needs to convert 3 times the UK a year, plus a substantial increase in mining. But this implies unregulated mining and child labour involved in cobalt mining and the environmental damage from mining lithium. And that's just one country. If every country in the world reaches the same state of conversion to net zero, then the cost of all these vital components will skyrocket in price. And there's a problem of energy storage. Extinction Rebellion have stated that backup electricity for all hospitals will be provided by batteries by 2025. If you think about the examples, the batteries installed in Adelaide, South Australia, at a cost of £45 million, providing 100 megawatts and 128 megawatt hours. These would power the emergency wards only at Addenbrooke's for 24 hours. If the transmission lines in the east of England were taken out, a stack of 7 such batteries would be needed at a cost of £315 million. The current backup for Addenbrooke's is 2 1500 kVA diesel generators at a total cost of £250,000. This is a battery to diesel ratio of 180 to 1 per day. I'm bringing this proposition as it seems to me that no one in the island has the slightest idea of the scale and cost of the task of a transition to net zero by 2030. The prospect of the costs of well over £100,000 a household is a daunting one. To get the whole world to the same standard will cost households in the order of £450,000 each. At £100,000, the cost will be recouped over 50 years, and for £450,000 will be substantially longer. Informed opinion estimates that we should need a demand economy to achieve the 2030 target, which will be essentially a Marxist approach. We are facing, according to the Bank of England, a situation of an inflation of 10%. We have islanders using food banks as never before. We have the prospect of all costs increasing, fuel increases. We have pensioners already facing the decision of heating or eating. We are intending to remove the possibilities of lower income families having their own transport facilities, their own cars. For this reason, I recommend that we hold back on the net zero scheme as a whole. By all means, do the environmental schemes that are efficient and economic, like the plan to seed the sea round the island with seagrass and eelgrass, and the plan to have non-fishing zones around the island and eliminate dredging. We could cover the part of the cost of insulation by requiring a given percentage of the sale proceeds of a property to be used to provide a specific percentage of the cost of insulation of the property changing hands. This is a practice used in California with regard to earthquake-proofing houses. But please, do not inflict higher taxes and costs on islanders at this point in time when they are already suffering. I ask for the states to agree to this proposition.
Thank you very much, Senator. Is the proposition seconded? Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Young.
Thank you, sir. I very much admire the Senator's record. I think the Senator has announced, I think she'll correct me, I'm sure, if I'm wrong, that her long period, this will be at the end of her long period of state service, which I want to acknowledge. And of course, as Deputy of St Brelade, I've very much followed in her footsteps. She was, I think, first elected in 2002 and again in 2005, and then did what I have not been able to do, was to get elected as a senator. And in fact, I had the experience of fighting election against Senator Ferguson in 2016 in the by-election, and I was knocked out of sight. But having said that, sir, I do that by way of background because I think the Senator has clearly, in her speech, given us a lot of information which I think I personally find quite overwhelming in terms of that very little of that is contained in the proposition and the report that we have before us. It's a 7-line proposition and sort of 3/4 of a page of report, which really based on 2 principles. It says, I believe, in essence, that the state should halt our commitment towards addressing with the climate emergency because of 2 factors, because of the uncertainty on future fuel costs as a result of the Ukraine war, and the fact that obviously Europe has got issues of fuel supplies from Russia, whereas of course the UK has a relatively minor component of its fuel supplies coming from Russian sources. And the second, I think, underlying principle of the Senator's call a halt to call a halt to our drive towards eliminating carbon as part of a worldwide global drive is that it will have, because of the effects on lower income families and local businesses. Of course, the Senator doesn't say how long she thinks we should call a halt to. But I think there's no question that if the state's members were to sign up to this, I think we would be abandoning all of the work that this Assembly has done and has authorised by propositions right since I believe this Assembly was formed in 2018. And I think, frankly, I believe that the proposition is based on, firstly on the first point, as a false premise. The idea that we should cease work on trying to move away from carbon dependency by continuing or ending our work to try and reduce that seems to be that it could have completely the reverse effect. And I know in listening to similar debates, similar views have been expressed from some quarters in the United Kingdom. I believe they're minority sources. But the majority view, certainly in the UK as it is elsewhere around the world, that would be counterproductive. We need to move away from carbon, and that means renewable energy sources. And at the moment, we have a dependency on a links of electricity supply. We're fortunate as an island that we don't generate on islands, but we obtain our energy source from a French link, which at the present time is a mixture of hydro and nuclear. And of course, then I agree that there is that level, that uncertainty about whether that arrangement, which is contractually, I believe, tied up until 2027, what the future of that is. And I can tell the Senator and other members that this is why we've had approaches. We've had approaches from many sources that the island, as well as doing our carbon neutral roadmap, that we should be having a plan to be able to generate our own renewable energy from local Channel Island sources. There are lots of opportunities there, particularly at the moment. Wind is one, but there are lots of others, and their work is already starting with officers, and there are ongoing discussions with commercial interests. I know that the Jersey Electricity Committee company are very on board with this approach, that we need to do that for the future, and of course discussions as well with states members in Guernsey. And so I think, so that clearly that is about moving away from carbon dependency. And of course, on the issue of lower income, the Senator is right that right from the start, we've made it absolutely plain, the states have made it explicit, that we cannot achieve carbon neutrality and deal with the issue of carbon by increasing income inequality. It was the fifth principle of the state strategy that was approved in 2020. We will make sure that carbon neutrality policies do not increase income inequality. And that means providing support. It means managing the energy market to mean that they don't have that. And if we have to provide subsidies and so on, we have to do that. Now, here we are at the end of a parliament, if you like. We are a parliament. And we're going to have a debate in a few days' time about the detailed roadmap. And I would say to the members, if you don't like what's in that, you can vote the roadmap down. We can have that debate. But here we've got what you might call a blockbuster proposition. So stuff it down now because of these arguments, which are technical arguments, and I think they're not in the Senator's report, and I certainly will be asking the officers to ferret out or to investigate some of those pieces of information that the Senator gave us. For example, I'll highlight one. I answered, the Senator argues that the costs are extraordinarily, well, she quotes in her figures, she estimates that the burden on the island is £1.5 billion. It's the first time I've seen that figure, but there it is, it's in that paper. That is not supported by the technical evidence of the work we've done. The last 3 years, there's been technical work done with umpteen experts and advice that underpin that carbon neutral roadmap that we're going to debate in a few days, and all the technical information is there. But it does not support £1.5 billion. And then we've got here the fact that that is based on the cost of £100,000 per household and for insulation and electrical systems. The Senator asked me that in questions without notice the other day. And here I had hoped for a little bit more time to come back with the actual numbers. But here I've got to do it now because I'm willingly agreeing that the Senator could bring this forward. And the figures that we've got, typical, and the work from the previous energy conservation scheme shows that changing to an air source, this is from the Energy Savings Trust, changing to an air source heat pump, £7,000 to £13,000 depending on the property, and a typical cost for insulation is somewhere around £700 for more. I mean, I quoted in the Assembly, I think about 25,000, 30,000, but I will circulate that information and I will list all the energy grants that we gave under that scheme for 3 years before we have that debate on the carbon neutral argument. But I ask members, please, not now. If we were to do this, there'll be other consequences of this. I believe our island's international reputation would be damaged. We have worked with the other Crown dependencies. We have worked with the UK. We've worked internationally. We attended the international conference at COP26. Commitments have been made that if the States Assembly, and it is subject to the States Assembly, approving the carbon neutral roadmap that we're going to have scheduled for debate this sitting, if it is subject to that, we will sign up to the Paris Accord. And of course, if this was to be voted through now, that would finish that. That would be our international reputation, I think, to be frank, shredded. We would put ourselves completely outside the pale. If members want to do that, I say have the debate on the carbon neutral roadmap, not now. And then there is the opportunity, which hopefully Senator Gorse might say something on these, or these economic experts, that the issue of sustainable finance, there are economic opportunities potentially ahead of green finance and sustainable finance for the green economy, for that transition. And that is a really important strategic issue for the islands. And if we were to set ourselves against that now and say, no, we're not going to do this, we're closing the door, I think that would be, it'd be a tragedy, sadly. And then there is, of course, what message this sends to the Citizens' Assembly. How much commitment have we made to a Citizens' Assembly? Probably nearly a year. I'm not sure. We've spent a lot of money. These recommendations that we brought in our roadmap come from islanders. And they told us the ambition. How am I going to go? It's too late for me now because I'm not going to be in the next assembly, but I've been to schools. And the kids tell us we have to deal with climate change. What's the message to them? Look, I'm not dismissing Sarah Ferguson's concerns.
Senator Ferguson.
Sorry, sir. Sorry, I've getting carried away. I'm not dismissing Senator Ferguson's concerns at all, because I know the senator's passion, and I admire her immensely, because up to now, the senator has been a lone voice in this area. I hope, frankly, that remains, but I absolutely respect that political determination that drives, that maintains that unrelentingly. I admire that characteristic. It takes some real, but it doesn't mean to say I agree with it. I can admire it, but I can't agree with it. And it's my job to ask the Assembly, please, do not go with this proposition. I think it's misplaced. But none of that is in any way disrespectful to the Senator, who I have to say has got the highest regard in my God. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. And towards the end of the speech there, the Minister for the Environment talked about the Senator's views, which are well known about climate change. And despite those views, and you know, I don't share them, but despite those views, I do, as the Minister for the Environment, have a great deal of respect for the Senator. She has, on many occasions, shown to us and to islanders who've supported her in her many elections and re-elections, that she is a forward-thinking person. It was Senator Ferguson, actually, who started to talk about Chinese hardware being used in telecommunications, and many people derided her at the time and did not listen, but in fact she was right. And so I do think, however difficult and awkward this debate may be, given current enthusiasm, and quite rightly so, for the environment and for carbon neutrality and our future, it is important to take the Senator's argument very, very seriously, because some solutions do need to be found to tackle the cost of living. Just today, the retail price index has been published, and that shows when spending groups are broken down, inflation is broken down by spending groups, it shows fuel and light to be 21.9% and motoring to be 10.5%. That's obviously with the overall RPI sitting at 6%. So something does need to be done. Just last night, after entertaining the Polish ambassador and people from the embassy, from the Court of St. James, we saw the news highlights that showed that Russia was cutting off the supply of gas to Poland. This is a changing scenario It is changing rapidly, and none of us really know quite what lies ahead. So if it does require, albeit a difficult one, but some reconsideration of current views for a period of time, and I take on board that this is an open-ended proposition, but it does require our careful consideration, particularly in light of the fact that the Jersey Consumer Council have been writing to the government consistently over the past months and proposing changes that could be brought by ministers. Unfortunately, the Treasury team don't appear to be in the chamber at the moment. Perhaps the Assistant Minister from Treasury who's sitting behind me might be able to assist. But there is a special project team currently working on options for the next government to consider to help alleviate the cost of living crisis ahead of the winter, because many, many islanders are going to be facing difficulties that we can already see are coming down the track with regards to the cost of living, and they unfortunately only appear to be likely to exacerbate in the coming months rather than be alleviated. And of course, the fuel duty is the main source of funding for the carbon neutral strategy. So whilst we can understand why the government has declined requests from the Jersey Consumer Council to reduce fuel duty for the time being to help alleviate the cost of living crisis, the government's not keen to do so because it reduces funding for the carbon neutral strategy. So we can't always have our cake and eat it. It is, I have to say, I like cliches because they often ring true. And so it is with some difficulty that I contemplate this, but I really do urge members to listen carefully to the Senator today and think about what it is and how we are going to approach both our desire to improve and enhance the environment and to live more energy efficiently going forwards, but also to address what really is a major issue for islanders at this time, and that is the cost of living. Thank you.
Very much, Senator. Connie Harbison-John.
Thank you, sir. I wasn't expecting this debate so soon, but the Environment Minister spoke about the Citizens' Assembly, and I'd like to remind members of the letter circulated by the GREF from the Youth Parliament. The environment was one of the key areas the Youth Parliament have worked upon. And I'll just quote a couple of pieces, if I may, sir. When young people were asked how important the environment is to them, it returned the highest score of 8.32 out of 10, showing how concerned today's youth are about the climate crisis. So this was in contrast to the 4.35 out of 10, the rating that summed up how satisfied participants were with the government's response to the climate crisis. We need to have the debate later in this session, sir, on the roadmap, and people will have an opportunity then to say yes or no. The Youth of Parliament spoke about the importance of that roadmap. They also spoke about the work of the Citizens' Assembly. They ask us, sir, as leaders, to be good role models for the people of Jersey, especially for young people, and to set an example on how we as a whole community should take responsibility for our impact on the environment. I'm not going to rehearse my speech that I've got, sir, for that roadmap debate, but I can tell members that I've been involved in environmental issues for many years. Writing about electric vehicles some 10 years ago, introducing electric vehicles into fleets 8 years ago, so on and so forth, introducing walking maps. Most recently, sir, I have taken the initiative to pull together the parish climate groups so that we can work together, we can learn from each other, and we can see how we can, as a community, reduce our impact on this environment. So I'll finish by quoting from a youngster who participated in the survey, and they're quoted in the letter. We're making progress, but I don't feel like we're making it fast enough. We need to start implementing things quicker and adding more pressure to get things done. This shows how worried the youth are about our future, and we need your help to make a difference. I think the most important part of this letter, sir, we need to work on climate change before there is no climate to change. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Conitab. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Conitab Brillard.
Thank you, sir. And I thank Senator Ferguson for this proposition, because actually she's absolutely right. And her perception of the effect of the carbon neutral roadmap is not inaccurate. We, sir, have signed up to utopian aspirations which will be pushed forward as we realise how, I say pushed forward in date, I suspect, as we realise how impossible they are to achieve until technology catches up. Senator Ferguson is a qualified engineer and knows that technology is not aligned with our aspirations at this time. People in Jersey are concerned with the cost of living now and possibly less concerned with the cost of living at this moment in 2050. Now, so that said, the roadmap is something we have to work on, and whether or not we stop now will not, I feel, make a lot of difference given the time it'll take to achieve reduced levels of impact on our environment. Realistically, sir, I don't believe we can stop. We have to carry on. I think the pace of change will be controlled by what is done outside Jersey, whether it be the UK, our nearest neighbours France, or in fact global issues. We have very little control over what technology does, what cars become available in the island, what methods of transport become available in the island, and in fact you've only got to go 30, 40 miles over to France to see that actually the volumes of traffic that still persist, shall we say, in France are massive, and there doesn't seem to have been a great contribution to the roadmap in that particular country. So, sir, I do applaud the Centre for bringing this. I think it sharpens our mind to realise it is not all sweet and rosy, but I suspect most members will probably feel that actually won't make too much change. So, but I don't think it would be wise to support it. We have to listen to what's going on in the rest of the world. We have to listen to what the young of the island want and move on in the right direction. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Conitab. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Just very briefly, I do respect the Senator who's been in this assembly a lot longer than me, and I respect members for the time they've spent here, because I know how difficult work is and how difficult the job can be. So I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying that. In terms of this proposition, there is a fundamental flaw in the logic that goes behind it. This talks about suspending the carbon neutral strategy because of the high costs of fossil fuels. The point of the carbon neutral strategy is to reduce our use of fossil fuels. What has been demonstrated with the Ukraine war and the volatility in the markets of fossil fuels is that the more reliant we are upon them, the more insecure people become, the more insecure working people become, the more insecure the elderly become, the more insecure working class people become, because someone else is controlling the cost of the day-to-day fueling. Now, if 20 years ago we'd have gone down the line on this island of insulating homes, building to certain standards, electrifying, taking fundamental solar at that time and solar wind power, we would not be in any worry about the cost of oil prices and the fuels and the Ukrainian war for this small island, because we would become much more self-sufficient. And that's what we need to be doing. And I'm afraid there isn't a value in that, in what we're doing, in suspending our commitments. And the Constable of St John is, again, very correct when he talks about what young people want and the values for young people, because for the first time in our history, the effect of this is not in a couple of generations' time, it's for the next generation. And this is a really serious issue for this House, this Assembly. I can't believe I did it, so I blame Deputy Southern for it. this is a really serious issue for this assembly, and we have to maintain an international reputation about the sensible approach that we're taking to this. And so in terms of cost, I think the one thing I would say is that we haven't entered into a sensible argument about cost, because we put figures on to change, but we haven't talked about figures of maintaining what we have now and repairing redundant old technology that will rely upon fuels that are less abundant, less available because of socio-economic pressures around the world. And so therefore, sir, now there's never been a better time to make this transition and this change. And I think the problem is that what is not understood, this transition and change is not simply taking what we have and replacing everything with an electric clean version, because that doesn't really exist. It's about genuine change to what we do, and we'll talk about that more when we come to the carbon neutral roadmap. I would also ask whether, if we adopted this proposition today, which I genuinely hope we do not, whether that would nullify the the other debate on the carbon neutral strategy, because it does talk about suspending it. And so this has a much greater implication than people realise. So if anyone's thinking they might sit there and press I don't know why you would, to be honest, because you need to read the entire paragraph and see what it's actually saying. Suspend our reduction in fossil fuel use because of the cost of fossil fuel use. It really isn't logical. And I mean that in the most polite way I possibly can. But I think, sir, and I would ask perhaps yourself or perhaps the Attorney General, I think it may be yourself, sir, because you make a judgment on this, what the effect it would have on the carbon neutral roadmap discussion and all the work that's gone into that and our future legacy, if you like, from this Assembly coming into the next few years. So I urge members to reject this as politely as possible, but let's reject this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Guida.
Sir, and now I find myself agreeing with Deputy Ward. It's a special day, but it is easy. It is very, very easy. It's quite remarkable that we can be here today actually discussing whether we should throw our lot back into hydrocarbons and depend on them for the next few years because they're becoming expensive. And I failed to find a logic. There isn't one. There isn't one. We've just had proof, physical proof, that our dependency on hydrocarbons is a problem. It's a real problem. It's a problem economically, and it's a problem politically. And we've known that for decades. But you know, just when we're discussing this, just when we've had physical proof that it was a political problem, that it was an economic problem, we're now arguing on whether we should, or maybe depend on them more for a few years, because after all, what do we care about Ukraine? So, no, sorry. This has shown us and has shown the world, and if you look at the energy markets, everybody is struggling to find anything else to buy other than gas and petrol. So that's it. I think this really showed the world that it was time to change, and it is actively changing. It would be probably quite silly for Jersey to stop and not do it themselves. I would like to talk a little bit about the items that Senator Ferguson mentioned, because there are a few technical things. The first one is cost. Now, one of the reasons that we are in this problem now is because energy has been too cheap for 100 years. It's lovely. It's allowed us to develop into an extraordinary society, but it's been too cheap. We've just paid for the cost of extracting our energy, extracting hydrocarbons, but we've never paid for the cost of putting them in the earth for 20 million years. And now we have to. When we generate our own energy, that's what it costs. We have to pay for the whole cost. The cost of hydrocarbons are not going to come down. This is not temporary. This is just a trigger. Remember that we're screaming about the cost going up. My God, they are the same levels at 2008. They haven't gone up and then more up. They've actually come down significantly. And they are just reaching the levels that they were at more than 10 years ago. It's not an extraordinary rise. It's back to what it should have been if we didn't have, if Saudi Arabia hadn't decided to create a sovereign fund. That's what happened. It's very, very little to do with the rarity and the political and economic problems of using those fuels. So we're back on track. We're back to the normal price of those products, and it's only going to go up. Trying to depend on them any longer is not going to make us any better. Another thing that we've talked, so all this to say that the cost of energy, the cost of doing this is what it is now. And if it costs a little bit more to heat with electricity, we have to accept it, because that's what it will be with hydrocarbons. There is no escaping that the cost of hydrocarbons is going to reach the cost of electricity for almost all users. One thing that that seems to be of importance to Senator Ferguson is the technology. We've had petrol cars, if I'm not mistaken, for a little bit more than 130 years. They have been developed to death. They have, every single of these years, many companies have competed and tried to make them better, and they have been developed to death. We used to have electric cars. They were among the very first ones to be developed. So in 1890, there was an electric car. There were several for sale until about 1910, and then we stopped. Petrol was really cheap, really useful, and only used only that for the next 100 years. We've only started developing them again, seriously, for about 15 years. It's just started, it's barely started. Of course, our technology is much better, but the notion of having very, very large batteries and trying to pump as much electricity into them and as often as possible is very recent. It's not something that we've done very much. We talked about cobalt. 10 years ago, cobalt was an extremely important problem. You couldn't make a good lithium battery without cobalt, and cobalt is from a few mines in the world, most of them in Congo, which have all sorts of issues. They are not very large. The supply will run out very soon. They're not exploited very well. There's all sorts of problems with it. This year, Tesla, the largest manufacturer of electric cars in the world, manufactured half of its cars without cobalt, without any cobalt. And that's because they're using a new battery that they developed knowing that the source of cobalt was difficult, expensive, and was going to disappear. So they made a battery. They managed, with a lot of research and development, to make a battery that doesn't use it. In a couple of years, all of their cars will have batteries that use no cobalt. Neodymium is used to make permanent magnets. They make the engines a little bit efficient, and that's how we know. That's how we know now how to make engines a little bit more efficient. It's not an absolute necessity. Half of electric engines don't use them. They use coils as injection, so they don't use them. And there are other ways of doing them. There are other minerals that can be used to do them. Again, the research has just started, but it's because we know that it's a massive market, because the whole world is going into this. It's getting better all the time. Battery storage, which you just mentioned, battery storage. Battery storage depends a lot on how easy it is to obtain your electricity. People don't tend to realize that the grid consumes about half of the energy you produce. So the grid, when France looked at its energy production, they had a few nuclear power plants around, dams, wind power.
No, because it was next to something else.
If you just pause. I think somebody may have their microphone still on, and we can hear it in the chamber. Could people please check and be silent? Thank you. Please carry on, Deputy.
Yes, sorry. The actual grid, the wires, the resistance of the wires, would actually burn half of its energy. Sorry, half of this energy before it got used. So we start, in the concept of a large country, we start with 50% of the energy which is wasted just going through wires. If you store it, that's a 50% capital that you can waste storing it. You can have a battery that is very inefficient, that is 60% efficient, and still be above what it takes to send the electricity back and forth on wires. A lot of existing battery chemistry does that, and there's some of them that have almost infinite lives. And again, I'm just very, very quickly diving into the technology just to say, it's just started. A lot of this, because of the demand, because we're doing this, because we are deciding here to go carbon neutral, that sort of demand is driving billions of dollars into the industry, into research, to sort out the solutions. It's not something we can stop. So why would we? We know that hydrocarbons are the problem economically, and now we're absolutely certain, it's been proven to us that it's a problem politically. We don't really want to depend on Saudi Arabia, America, or Russia for anything. You know, why would we? Why would we want to depend on them? And we know that the technology is going really, really fast, and it's serving us. So it's no time to stop. And this is completely independent from the actual climate change. So think about having no more noise pollution, no more gas pollution. When we're talking about, you think about CO2 and what it does to as a greenhouse gas. You're talking about the equivalent weight of your car being generated in gases every year. That's a lot of pollution. That's a lot of stuff you have to breathe in. If we get rid of that, who cares about the climate? This is already so good. This is already so good. And in terms, if we talk about cars, I could have said this. Sorry, I probably said it years ago. Electric cars are just massively superior to petrol cars. They're just better. There's no stopping them. They're more expensive now, but you save tons of money because you don't ever have to buy petrol again. So that's just better. Again, there is no stopping them, and we don't need to make that much of an effort to get using all this. So this is definitely not the time to stop. Very, very last thing. Today, this is not the right time to stop, because we are going to debate the carbon neutral strategy reasonably soon. And this is a much more complex document, and we still have a chance to vote contre all of it if you think that it is not the right thing to do. But at least it will be the whole thing. It will not be a single vote saying let's stop about this and come back later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Many members have spoken of their respect for the senator who has brought this proposition, and I share that respect. In her opening speech, she mentioned that she felt the cost of transition to net zero was too high. And that struck me, sir, because I have been reading fairly recently, I think it was earlier this month, there was a report released by the United Nations scientific body, the IPCC, and that spoke about the cost of not acting. And the word that was used, and I think it's unusual for scientists to use words like this, but the words that were used were words such as catastrophic, and the cost of not acting is catastrophic. And the report that I was looking at is the third report by this body, and it's taken several years to compile by some of the top scientists in this area, as I said, by the United Nations scientists. And it's in effect a final warning to humanity. And so whilst, so the Senator, I think it is right actually to remind us that there will be economic impacts in the short term. And I think what we can take from the Senator's proposition is that we must be mindful that those impacts, which are going to happen as we act, that those impacts do not disproportionately affect any particular group in the short term. And that's what I'm going to take from this proposition. I won't be supporting it, but I will take that from it. But just on the costs, and I was listening with interest to the previous speaker, who's clearly got a lot of knowledge in this area. I don't claim to have any particular expertise in this area, but what I do hold as a principle, which is very dear to me, is that I listen to scientists, and I like to understand the science behind anything. And when I looked a little bit further into this, and specifically in the costs, the IPCC also found that the economic benefits of climate action will outweigh the costs. And to put it another way, that the costs of climate inaction and the costs of damage as a result of climate change outweighs the cost of acting. So it's going to cost us more if we do nothing. And I think sometimes it's hard for some of us to conceptualize climate change and to envisage what those costs might be if we don't do anything. Like, it's easier to envisage and to calculate the short-term costs that might be attached to any strategy that we're putting in place. And it's like an evolutionary quirk in our psychology. We find it really hard to conceptualize a threat that isn't immediately affecting us, kind of in our faces, and thus we can find it really difficult to mobilize ourselves. And as a race, we then end up kind of putting our heads in the sand. But a previous book, I think it was the Constable of St. John, mentioned the Youth Parliament. And one of the things in terms of climate change that I have really taken notice of recently is that children are really scared about this. And that, to me, it's like an alarm bell. Our children are urging us to take action. So even if we can't be scared about this and kind of gird ourselves and mobilize ourselves to take action, let's listen to our children. So I do think this proposition is a good opportunity, because anything that forces our heads out of the sand and gets us to think about this subject is good. We have to confront it. So I urge anyone, and I don't think there are many of us actually in the Assembly that do have doubts. I think from the sound of the speeches, I don't think this proposition will be supported, and I think that I'm quite hopeful for current members, and from what I'm seeing about candidates standing in the election as well, I hope that the new Assembly will be able to take decisive action as a collective. But anyone who does have doubts, I would just urge them to look up the work of the IPCC and the reporting around it. And even if it feels scary, just to do some work on coming to terms with that, because it is really important that we aren't challenging each other on this. We need to act collectively to tackle this. And again, I'll go back to those words that the scientists are using: catastrophic and disastrous impacts that are coming if we don't act. And we need to act together in the best interests of our children. And that's what I'll be thinking about. And I will be voting against this.
Thank you very much, Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. And like others who have spoken before me, I would like to praise Senator Ferguson, who I've known for very many years, well before she entered the States. And I have a lot of respect for her. I don't always agree with some of either her political views or some of even scientific views. But at the same time, that's politics. We don't all agree with each other. But she has raised some very important issues in what she's actually outlined to us today. The only problem is that her proposition, coming as it does at the 11th hour, almost before the Assembly leaves, does not give us time to properly debate and examine all the issues. Nor do I believe the proposition that Deputy Ward is bringing forward. It's going to be in the new Assembly when all the arguments for and against are examined in detail. Now, can I say from the outset, I do believe that climate change is affecting the climate and we have to take action. However, I'm also concerned about the impact it does have on ordinary islanders. And as someone has already mentioned, the cost of living is different for different people. People on very low incomes particularly suffer. But it isn't just them. Even the middle sector of this island, the middle class, well, I don't even like the term, but let's say the squeezed middle of Jersey, are going to find the squeeze getting even harder going forward, not only because of external factors to do with Ukraine and etc., but also as we start bringing in these measures. And so therefore there's got to be a lot of detailed examination. And I agree with some of the points that Senator Ferguson has mentioned about some of the technology or the impact, the same as Deputy Guida. That does not mean that they should not be given due consideration and weighed in the balance. So what I'm going to say is, I hope Senator Ferguson won't take it, and people like her who support her views think I'm just dismissing them. I'm not. I just don't think we have the time today or in the next few days to give this debate proper justice. It's going to be a major topic, and we're going to have to devote an awful lot of time. I say we, it depends on who's in the States, whether I am and other people are in the States, going forward. And it will be a major debate. There's a lot of evidence that's going to be gone through, and we've got to come up with not only practical, but effective solutions that benefit islanders as well as the planet. So, sir, I shall be voting against the proposition, but not because I dismiss some of the concerns she's actually raised and some of the points she's raised. And I'll just leave it at that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. In any Venn diagram, there's usually a small part, I think it's called the lens, where there's an intersection, and we seem to have found the intersection between Deputy Guida and Deputy Ward today, and no doubt myself. So it could be that three circles are consorting, sir, and there's a small point of agreement in the middle. And I think I was particularly struck by the comment, and I liked the speech from the Deputy, when he said, even if you put climate change aside, and if you think about all the pollution, etc., that's going on, both locally and globally, and what kind of cleaner, quieter islands that we might have, notwithstanding that sometimes it's handy to hear a car coming around the corner in a country lane, that would be much better for the island. And it reminds me of the cartoon which has been circulating on social media for quite a while now. And it's basically, for the theologians amongst us, the Pascal's argument, the Pascal's wager, as it's called, of climate change. And the cartoon says, somebody's objecting, there's this presentation, there's this conference going on. He says, but what if it's all a hoax? And what if we end up creating a better world for no good reason? And I think that's really Pascal's wager for the climate. Because even if, as some believe, that climate change either doesn't exist, or in fact, no climate change denier will admit to that. So they say, well, we believe climate change is happening, we just don't believe it's happening to the extent which some scientists claim, because they've all got a vested interest, or that it's not caused by man because we've had ice ages come and go before. I was handed a nice little cartoon book from the Deputy of Grouville, and it reminds me that, of course, the Channel Islands have been subject to their own ice age only some 6,000 or 7,000 years ago, where we used to be connected to France, and we're no longer connected. And so they would say, you know, these things just come and go, you've got to deal with it, and the planet can survive. But the point is that even if that were the case, and none of this is anything that we cause or anything that we can do anything about, we can still create a better world, I think, and a better local environment by reducing our carbon footprint. And the other point that strikes me is that this proposition it's not just one of those well-intentioned propositions where, you know, the last one from Deputy St. Peter's, he identified a problem which is real, which exists, and tries to find a solution. This one actually does the complete opposite of what we should be doing in response to a problem which we, I think, all recognise is there. And I've been trying to think of the right analogy for it. So the first point is that we want to reduce, and I'll call it our addiction, to fossil fuels. We want to reduce our addiction to petrol, to diesel, to gas, to oil, whether that's for transport or whether it's for heating our homes. And we've made that decision. We all agree that's the right thing to do. And at the same time, the natural cost of those products is going up. Now, we've tried something similar, I don't fully agree with it, with cigarettes and alcohol. And If for some reason the natural price of tobacco went up all of a sudden, and smokers started emailing us, and the suppliers of tobacco said to us, you know, tobacco prices have gone through the roof. They used to be X amount, now they're X plus 20, X plus 50%. Would you consider reducing the duty on tobacco so that smokers can, you know, because they're really feeling the pinch here. We've got some low-income smokers and they can't afford to smoke anymore. But do you think the Treasury Minister would say, yeah, that's fine, let's just do that? It's just a temporary solution because of the conflict, wherever it is that tobacco comes from, we can't get the supply, so we'll do that to help you sell more tobacco. No, you wouldn't. You say, why would we want to reduce the duty on tobacco? Why would we want to reduce the duty on fuel when in fact the duty on fuel has stayed exactly the same? The duty on fuel hasn't gone up. The percentage duty that we charge on fuel has gone down because it's a fixed amount. Now, that takes me to the next point, that the GST take for the Treasury has gone up. So if we estimate that fuel prices, and I'm thinking about the pump here, has gone up by 30%, presumably the GST take has also gone up by 30% on road fuel. So what I would be suggesting is, rather than actually giving a discount to people who use petrol, diesel, whatever it is, biofuels in their car, what we should be saying, or biofuels I think are a separate category, we should be looking to discount that. What we should be doing is saying, okay, we've received a windfall there, therefore we're going to put even more money into the climate change fund. And this is the point, because surely now that all the fossil fuel prices have gone up, there's no better time to help make that change, whether it's government-led or from an individual point of view, because now the payback on your electric car, on your electric bike, although of course an electric bike, if it's replacing a push bike, doesn't save you anything as such, but if you're using an electric bike instead of a moped or instead of a car, that can only be a good thing. You're going to save money quicker in an environment where fuel's going through the roof. So we should be encouraging as government and also individuals to do that if they have the money to transition now. The argument for transition is surely stronger now than it ever was, if only on economic grounds. Lastly, sir, I want to extol the virtue of, I don't always do this, but some initiatives in the private sector. So today, again, I was able to use an EV car because it was convenient for me. I needed to get home at lunchtime. And we will see a shift in behaviour, I believe, when the likes of EV are able to, you're able to book a car, pick it up in one location and drop it off and leave it in another, because we'll see that the need for a privately owned vehicle, which you have 24/7 parked outside your property, the need for that will reduce. And we will start to see households who maybe now have two cars saying, actually, I can just do with one car. You'll see households with one car saying, actually, I can do without any car at all, because I can just borrow one when I need to, and I can get around the island in a clean and efficient way. So I think that I'm perhaps not going to be so kind to the outgoing senator, apart from to say that I know that she is somebody who's always been accessible, and I know that she does have the ear of many parishioners and many experts, it has to be said. And I get contacted by mechanics who live up in Kennervay who have also spoken to Senator Ferguson, and they make some really good points about the fact that the transition isn't going to be straightforward. I'll make these last points, is that because with every transition there's always a drawback. So there is an issue, of course, around batteries. But I only hear people raising those objections when it comes to seemingly want to protect the petrol car. They don't talk about batteries in laptops or batteries in phones, and they don't seem to campaign for better working conditions for little African or South American boys down the mine. Ordinarily, they're not starting petitions with Amnesty to get better conditions. They're just saying as soon as it starts to encroach on the ability to drive a private petrol car, that seems to be where their concerns begin. I'm sorry if that's slightly unfair, but that's the way I read it. And similarly, I didn't know this until last night when I spoke to one of my Twitcher friends in Le Canavay. We all know that a Twitcher is a bird watcher. And I was genuinely interested in what he thought about wind farms, because up until now I've certainly thought wind farms could be part of the solution that Jersey could offer in its aim for regeneration and clean energy. And he said, no, wind farms are terrible, because from the bird perspective, he said that when they're migrating, when there's fog, and even when there isn't, they just fly into these massive blades. So you'll never find a solution that is going to please everybody, and no doubt there'll be drawbacks when it comes to tidal power, but clearly there are massive drawbacks to our current addiction to fossil fuels. So I think it's an area that we're all going to have to get our heads together. But surely Jersey being surrounded by the sea, by wind, and by not a small amount of sun, we should be able to find solutions for private homeowners as well as for more wide usage of our energy, so that we can transition to a green future, sir. This isn't the way to do it. As I said, this proposition does exactly the opposite of what we should be aiming for.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Pershard.
Thank you, sir. As the Assistant Minister for the Environment with responsibility for the carbon neutral roadmap, I must urge members to reject this proposition. Without prematurely starting the carbon neutral roadmap debate, I would like to address a couple of the points made by the Senator in her proposition and a couple of the speakers. Since first being sworn into office on the 12th of December 2002, Senator Ferguson has been a strong voice for the vulnerable and for other minority groups such as the elderly and those on lower-income households. And in this proposition, I think she is demonstrating that care and that wish to defend a minority view, and also to protect those who she deems at risk from the carbon neutral roadmap, in particular lower income households. And despite disagreeing with the proposition and despite urging members to vote against it, I have to applaud the Senator for this fierce protection of the vulnerable, which is something she has demonstrated throughout her 17 or so years of service in the Assembly. What I would like to address in terms of the content is the concept of Principle 5, which is present in the carbon neutral roadmap. And I hope to reassure members that unlike the suggestion in P70, the carbon neutral roadmap is in fact designed to protect those who may be financially vulnerable. The fifth principle of the roadmap is that the policies contained in it will not increase income inequality. It is not within the purview of the roadmap to do the opposite. It does not aim to decrease income inequality. That is not the role of this set of environmental policies. But I can assure members that there is ongoing and active engagement between officers of the Environment Department and those in Social Security who are working to ensure that fifth principle is in fact maintained, and that the policies will not increase income inequality. The carbon neutral roadmap also has as an appendix the distributional impacts assessment. That was a report commissioned by the Environment Department to assess the potential impacts on the finances of families and individuals of the policies. If members haven't yet had a chance to look at it, I do advise reading it or flicking through it before the debates on the roadmap, because I think that will do a lot to assure members that distribution of income and the protection of those who might be financially vulnerable with the introduction of new measures have in fact been seriously considered in a systematic, academic and evidence-based manner, and that that fifth principle has truly been at the foundation of the development of all the subsequent policies. Regarding the money, again, this is just to address some points raised in the wording of the proposition. The money that is being proposed in the spend of the carbon neutral roadmap is money that has already been put aside in the Climate Emergency Fund. It is money that is already there and already ring-fenced specifically for this purpose. The Senator is absolutely right that we've projected a £250 million spend on the implementation of all the policies up to 2050. But I think something that has not yet been picked up on is the fact that doing nothing will cost, does bring with it costs. And the Auxera report that again was commissioned by the department estimated that the cost of doing nothing would be in the region of £600 million, as opposed in comparison to the £250 million spend that we're proposing. The cost of doing nothing includes direct and indirect costs. We're talking about health impacts, demand for service, and so on. And if members would like to see more detail, the report is published and it's entitled something like the Quantitative Analysis of Carbon Neutrality by 2030. And I think that's the cost of doing nothing is really worth bearing in mind, because we know the arguments around the kind of soft costs of doing nothing. We talk about well-being and the need for green spaces, and these are really important as well, but there is actually a massive financial cost to the state of doing nothing, which is often something that we don't talk about or draw enough attention to. And finally, whilst I have acknowledged and I have praised the Senator for representing a minority view, it's actually really important that minority views are represented in this Assembly. That's what we're here to do, to make sure that everybody in society is protected. I have to say in this particular case that the drive towards carbon neutrality and protecting our environment is people-driven, in the sense that our society wants us, is calling for us to take urgent, immediate action to ensure that Jersey plays its part in its protection of the planet. And so, again, I won't preempt the arguments in the carbon neutral debate about why we should do that as a small jurisdiction, which we should. But this is a people-driven piece of work, and not just people in Jersey, it's people from across the globe. It's the most important issue of our time. In the minds of our young people, it's the most important issue of our time, and it's now. There was a time where I think a lot of people thought, well, it's for my grandchildren, which is obviously still driving people to do the right thing. So I want to protect the world for my grandchildren, but actually that's not the case. It's now. It's for everybody now, and of course, particularly for the younger people who will live through the worst of the impacts of doing nothing. So I'm sure members will join me in commending the Senator for her long service to the people, and thank her for bringing, this is her final proposition of this political term, and but I have to urge members to please reject it. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputies. Any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Senator Gorst.
Thank you, sir. As I pressed my light, sir, one of my colleagues whispered, don't. And I
Senator, you're entitled to sit down at any point.
I fully appreciate why they would do so, sir, considering the hour of the day. But the reason I do stand is because I think there is a school of thought that there is a choice here. And I don't actually believe there is a choice. Sometimes issues like this and this particular climate emergency issue has been pitched as an issue of those on the political left, and I don't think that is correct. I think that all leaders in every community have to take this seriously and that there is no choice but to continue on this journey and play our part in ensuring that we deal with ensuring that we are not contributing to these problems of climate change in as rapid a timescale as we can. And the international community, we know, have signed up to the Paris Agreement, which sets a date for 2050. Deputy Ward brought before this Assembly a date of going net neutral by 2030, and the proposal was then bridging between 30 and 50, probably with offsets. Offsets cost money. So there's no choice but to carry on this programme. But the Senator raises a very good and relevant point, as Senator Moore alluded to in her contribution. Now, the roadmap, as we will be debating, and as Deputy Ward rightly, as we would expect, said that one of the principles should be that dealing with the climate emergency shouldn't increase income inequality, and the Assistant Minister spoke for some length on this matter, in that it's one of the principles in the roadmap. And it's right, sir, that should be the endeavour of this Assembly. But I'm not quite so sure that it is as simple as writing it as a principle of the roadmap. I think it is probably the greatest challenge as we seek to tackle climate emergency. And I say that, sir, because what we will be asking of islanders around changing of transport habits, insulation of homes, changing of cookers, if I can put it like that, sir, changes of energy source, we must be clear with islanders, is expensive. And there is a reason why people have not made that change yet, and that is because it is expensive. And I feel self-conscious in saying this, sir, because there are islanders who have electric cars already. They've paid the price. And I won't go into the issue of batteries that Deputy Tadea spoke about, but just because somebody is making a point about the associated problems with the need to enhance battery supply doesn't mean to say we shouldn't listen to them, because they haven't made equally relevant points on other issues as well. They're all relevant. The requirement for storage of energy and how we deal with those problems is going to be fundamental to how we are actually able to transition. So those islanders who've got the financial choice have got electric cars or hybrid cars. So we look at each other and we know that we are in that position. So we're fortunate to do that. Those islanders who also are perhaps financially better off have done the maths, or the math as our American cousins would say, and they've realised that enhancing insulation in their own homes, using modern methods of heating and putting in air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps, they've done it, sir. We've done it. Because we could afford to, we were in that position. And so the Senator is absolutely right to remind us of the financial implications of going on this journey which we can't avoid. Her solution, however, sir, I don't think is the right one. Her solution to stop is not the right one. And this is where Deputy Higgins is absolutely correct, in that the new Assembly will have to carefully consider I fully expect that this Assembly will approve the roadmap, but we'll have to carefully consider the financial implications for vulnerable islanders as we move forward. Because as I alluded to, it could be that we slightly change tack with offsets in 2030. That might release some money that we could use to help vulnerable islanders. We don't know yet because there's a lot more work still to be done. But we are also clear, sir, as we see 6% inflation in our community today, that islanders are already struggling with cost of living arising out of global factors. And so we may have to take some measures which might seem short-term counterintuitive to the overall journey that we are going on, whilst at the same time being absolutely committed to meeting that global Paris standard. Because there are also opportunities for our economy, which islanders will be able to avail themselves of in ESG and Jersey becoming a centre for sustainable finance. But sir, I am reminded, and I know that members will have seen it as well, of being in a room and listening to colleagues, in this instance from islands who are much lower lying than we are, literally pleading with delegates and saying this: if we do not stick with our commitments on this journey to tackle climate change, there will be absolutely nothing that they can do. They will be homeless in a matter of years. Whole communities, whole countries, whole islands. And sometimes, sir, it does justice for us to remind ourselves as an island community that we have our part to play in supporting them and doing what is required. So I cannot support the Senator today, but I do think, as Deputy Higgins said, we will need to consider further and in much greater detail the financial implications of what we must do and the journey that we must continue on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and call upon Senator Ferguson to respond.
Thank you, sir. Well, I expected that people would start objecting, but I would point out that the data that I'm quoting is from a paper by the previous Prince Philip Professor of Technology at Cambridge University, who retired recently. I sent you all a copy by email, but nobody seems to have read it. But if you read it, it will enable you to consider the prospective costs carefully. I was contacted a week or so ago by an emeritus professor of one of the sciences at a leading UK university. He wanted to persuade me to stand again in June. His comment was that in the midst of the scientific illiterates, I was an exception, which was both flattering and depressing. Deputy Young, I'm just saying, at the moment, let's call a halt until things stabilise. If we carry on without proper costings, which we are doing, what was it, 250 million, your Assistant Minister said. Well, it's going to cost a great deal more than that. So if we carry on without proper costings, we are being extremely profligate or being terribly stupid. He talks about the international damage to our reputation. It's nothing to the international damage when it transpires that we've all been had. It all reminds me of the South Sea bubble. And I hope that those members who are hiding in the coffee room or the computer room downstairs will stop being cowards and vote. Thank you for your comments, Senator Moore. Oh, they've already said they're going to hide in the coffee room, Mr. Bailiff, sir. Anyway, thank you for your very kind comments, Senator Moore. I hope I'm around to say I told you so in due course. The Connétable of St. John, I'm also concerned about the environment, but I'm not concerned about a climate crisis which doesn't exist. You know, there's only one car which will go from London to Edinburgh on one charge, a Mercedes. And the climate always changes. It's been changing since the Minoan warm period, through the Roman warm period. We went through the Little Ice Age. It's always going up and down. Thank you to the Connétable of St. Brelard. You know, again, we need to cost the roadmap. We can't just sit there and say, we're going to insulate everybody. Well, let's just do a bit of work on it first. You wouldn't build a house without knowing how much it was going to cost. Well, we need to look and see how much this is all going to cost. Deputy Ward, you know, when the UK finishes developing the fracking and the reopening of the North Sea oil wells, which has just started again, it means that we will be self-sufficient, or the UK will be self-sufficient in fuel. The Americans, when Biden goes, which he will do, I think, at the end of this session, the Americans, with the fracking down south, will be self-sufficient in oil. There's a lot of talk. The deputy talks about the offshore wind being very valuable. Well, the cost of offshore wind is 130,000 per megawatt compared to 35 to 40,000 megawatt for gas and oil. And Deputy Guida, I've already said the UK can be self-sufficient for hydrocarbons. The deputy spoke about the technological developments. I'd be interested to see his source information. Science is never settled, it's always developing, and I'd be delighted to have a look at, you know, this new manufacturer who's doing cars with these new batteries. I mean, I'll go and look them up anyway, but I'd be very interested to see his source documentation. Yes, I support the environment. It's just all this other falvilals that are added to it. Deputy Dublé, interestingly enough, number 5 IPCC report said that there was no problem with the increase, the sort of rise in sea levels. And then IPCC 6 said, oh yes, there's a great problem. Hang on a minute, they're using the same models, presumably. So how do they get from A to B? And with respect, they're not the top scientists. I've been following the United Nations proposals ever since the 1972 meeting. The secretary of the United Nations IPCC group says that it is an opportunity to totally change the world economic system away from a market system. And children being scared, I blame the media and these people who are living in cloud cuckoo land. Climate changes are totally normal. I've already mentioned the Minoan warm period and the ice ages and all those sort of things. You know, do your own research. Go back to the beginning. Don't just sit there and wait to be fed by people who are just rehashing comments made by other people. Deputy Higgins, thank you for your kind comments. We don't agree again, but never mind. Deputy Tadier, I agree with the concept of environmentalism. Weren't you listening to me? No, I don't think you were. What are your scientific qualifications? I wonder. Fossil fuel have brought people out of the dark ages. And please, will you all remember that the cost of net zero is estimated to be between 11 and 17% of GDP, which is adding some debts of some 400 to 800 million to the island's tax burden. I agree with the man who says that wind farms kill birds, particularly the bald-headed eagle in America. Deputy Pershard, thank you for your kind comments. I thought I'd been in the States for 18 years, not 17, but never mind. You're talking about 250 million. I'm sorry, that's not the overall cost. That's just a first stab. And the cost of doing nothing, what's the cost of doing the whole program? And you worry about the children being worried and nagging us about it. What science does youngsters actually, what have they been taught? We have a high school dropout from Sweden who's going around telling everybody what they should be doing. What science does she know compared to people who worked all their lives in climate science? I'm sorry, it's absolute rubbish. It is, as I have said, Deputy Senator Gorst, it is, as I have said, it is a cause of the scientifically illiterate. We do not have the calculated costs, and not everyone has a deep enough pocket to pay. If you look at the maps by NOAA, N-O-A-A, if you look them up on Google, they have a map of the world showing which bits of the world are sinking and which bits are rising, and explains why some bits are sinking. And some bits are sinking because the continents are tipping. But a lot of them are rising because it's a rebound from the Ice Age. So, please, will you just do a bit of homework instead of just accepting what these dodos at the United Nations are talking about, which is rubbish. And yes, I will be continuing with my fight, even when I'm not in the States. So I ask for the appel, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator. The appel is called for. I ask members to return to their seat. And I ask the greffier to open the voting, and those members participating remotely to vote in the chat in the usual way. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that the proposition has been defeated. 3 votes pour, 40 votes contre, no abstentions.
Could we have the pour, please, sir?
The members who voted pour were the Constable of St Mary, Deputy of St Peter, and Senator Ferguson.
Very well. We now come on to the next item of public business, which is states meetings, remote participation and proxy voting, P63, lodged by Deputy Gardner, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
States are asked to decide whether opinion A, that at any time when remote participation in states meetings is permitted generally, members should be able to participate remotely from outside Jersey in the event that unforeseen circumstances prevent that participation from in the islands, with the circumstances permitting such participation to be determined in accordance with guidance issued by the bailiff. B, that proxy voting should be permitted for votes in the States Assembly. And C, to request the Privileges and Procedures Committee to draft the necessary amendments to the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey to implement paragraphs A and B.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And I also minded about the time that left, and it's again a proposition about ourselves, but I hope we can, it was really important for me to bring this proposition and quickly explain why. And it's simple choice, yes or no, would we like to explore it further, because it's not the decision will be made by the next States Assembly. Without doubt, we have recently experienced extraordinary times, challenging times, and COVID exposed us to some procedural weaknesses and areas that technology had an ability to provide a resilience to our Assembly. As an Assembly, we have had to be more flexible, resilient, more forward-thinking, and I'm sure that everyone in this chamber remember the state sitting at the 4th Regent. It was very cold. We had 2 meters distance. And I remember my feeling, the thought that we will do our sittings online. It was unbelievable, and was like, it cannot happen. It was some disbelief. It was a shock. And I think that all of us remember the problems that we had at the beginning, the way we had to understand vote, web chat, noises at the backgrounds, microphones on and off, and cameras angles. We all worked really well to work remotely. We need to remember that we've been mentioned actually as the first assembly in the Commonwealth that we moved to hold full meetings remotely. So world change, we all change. We adapted technology and flexible approach, and it's become our second normal. Not ideal, and part of my proposition prompted by a recent personal event, and I will describe. In February, during half term, I found myself in London, should be back 5 days before actually state sitting, unable to travel due to testing positive to coronavirus. If I was in Jersey with coronavirus, like today, I would be able to attend meeting remotely and contribute. At the same time, the war in Ukraine started, and I had extensive communication with the Jersey-based Ukrainian community who needed support and help. I was unable to attend, I was unable to speak, I was unable to ask questions which were submitted in advance, and urgent questions from the community that they felt comfortable to reach out. It was their first instant point of contact. Unable to read emergency proposition, unable to vote due to exceptional circumstances in which I found myself. I'm grateful to Deputy Pershett for bringing an emergency proposition, working with me, learning the details, and there were several details which connected to several things. And I'm grateful for the support of the Assembly. At the same time, the only difference between me and other members was my IP address, and that I was in London. So, part A of the proposition saying that at any time when remote participation in the States is permitted generally, because we might find ourselves there is no remote participation, but when remote participation is permitted, the from outside of Jersey in an event or that unforeseen circumstances prevent their participation from in the island, with the circumstances permitted, such as participation, will be determined in accordance to the guidance by the bailiff. It's not by default. I'm not sure if members remember that exactly for the same sitting as myself, Chief Minister found difficult to get back to the island because of the tech problems with a failure with British Airways. And if option of proposed paragraph would be in place, Chief Minister would be able to answer the Assembly's questions. The business and operation of our Assembly would remain unchanged. And in essence, again, out of the IP address and postcode, the Chief Minister location wouldn't be different, and his contribution to the states wouldn't be different. We can recognize the voice, we can recognize the face, we know how does it work. And we live in a world where response times matter more than ever. An emergency meeting of our Assembly in August might be called in without us. We know how the world progresses. We don't know. So if we don't have anything in place, maybe in August we find ourselves that half of the elected assembly will not be here on the island physically, and we need to make decision immediately. Would it make us weaker not to have this option, or would it make us stronger to have this as an option? Moving to Part B. It's a proxy vote. Again, it's an option. There are lots of questions that need to be answered, how it will work, where it will work. If you look through my report, proxy vote was introduced in Guernsey in 2019 when they agreed that the member can act a proxy for a member who is absent from the States for the purpose of children or care for an infant or newly adopted child. An application for a proxy vote is made by the presiding officer. In House of Commons, Westminster, proxy vote is used for specific circumstances, and arrangement should be certified by the speaker in advance, and it's mainly around newborn parental responsibilities. France added to the proxy vote reasons like illness, accident, or serious family misfortune preventing from their senators to attend. Proxy vote can play a part in making legislature more family-friendly and inclusive, along with the important public health implication. I'm aware and I understand concerns among the members that it may be open door for people find excuse not to attend. I'm trying to put it in a nice parliamentary way. We have opinions and we have thoughts why people were attending, not attending, but I will leave it aside because, as members know, personally, I was advocating to be and meet in person as much as one. And I would like to put aside all the thoughts and think what it can, not to influence our discussion about who attending, who not attending, and why and how, to looking forward to making the assembly more inclusive and trust the system, trust ourselves, and trust the presiding officer that the judgment will be made accordingly. Actually, it's really ensuring that we can continue to function and be agile and flexible and going forward. It's an option. We don't decide if it will happen 100%, but we are actually, my proposition, asking, let's ask next PPC to consider and bring the proposition forward to be debated by the next assembly. And I move my proposition. Thank you.
Proposition is the proposition seconded.
Yes, sir.
Conataba St John.
Thank you, sir. I'm still not sure which way to vote on this proposition. I can see that it's very well intended, but I feel that we have to get back to normal. I have every sympathy with the Deputy for the circumstances she found herself in February, and I'm sure others have been in similar circumstance. Sir, I, like many members, have benefited from being able to participate whilst isolating with COVID, and that was very much appreciated. I was actually sleeping during the lunch breaks for the first 4 days of the Bridge and Island plan. Just the lunch breaks, sir. Just the lunch breaks. It is absolutely important that we facilitate those amongst us who need to shield and those who have COVID. So, whilst I've been here for a relatively short period, there have been 2 occasions during this time when I was the only member physically sat in this assembly. I will say that again. At times, there's been only 1 member sat in the chamber. I won't take it personally, Deputy. In fact,
perhaps if we could not have exchanges between members.
In fact, shortly after joining, I asked a question of PPC about attendance in the Assembly on the 5th of May 2021. Part of the response reads, members are required by the terms of their oath of office to attend the states when required to do so, unless they have a valid reason for absence. We had an instance recently, sir, that received media coverage when we were all due to be in the Assembly, excluding those who were isolating or sheltering, when at least 3 members who hadn't been physically present in the chamber were at a Chamber of Commerce lunch. A large gathering of people, no social distancing on the tables, yet members thought it was okay to be in attendance there when they hadn't been here in the morning. One of those members could and should have stayed at home. Yesterday we spoke about trust, and the proposer has just discussed trust this afternoon. Sir, I'll give members another example of why trust between the public and members is at an all-time low. I had an Islander ask me late last year why the States had finished early. In asking me, he knew the States hadn't finished. I explained we hadn't finished and we had to return the next day. The reason for the question, sir, the Islander had seen a States member putting up their outdoor Christmas decorations mid-morning whilst the person was listening to the debate on the radio as they drove past. Trust, sir. Trust. So these are just 2 examples of members on Ireland who could have been here and weren't. And this proposal looks to expand things. What is the description of unforeseen? The description or the incidents given by the Deputy was very much unforeseen. I believe we've relied on people to use their conscience to date, but the examples I've given doesn't fill me with confidence. I apologise to those members who have not been able to be here for genuine reasons, very genuine reasons, but some members have let the rest of us down. Sir, I look forward to hearing the debate and particularly the summing up. Thank you.
Very much indeed. Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. I've tried to be open-minded with this, not least because I had raised, I think, what was a concern of mine brought up during the pandemic, whereby it threw up some, I think, some unintended consequences. So I think it was quite right that for a period of time we were all sitting remotely, and then we had a hybrid setting, and then it became increasingly less hybrid, and then there was some pressure to be back in the Assembly, but there were some mixed health messages going on as well. That's probably the context. So the first easy place to start is Part B. I find it very difficult to support the concept of proxy voting. I could find it easy. I could say that, okay, in the next Assembly, for example, when this would kick in, you have Party A, maybe got 18 seats, Party B has 12 seats. There's a smattering of true independents, and then there's some who, you have a coalition of a party of non-partisans, whatever they want to call themselves, for better or for worse. Although it could be more of the same, of course. And so it's very attractive to think that actually, just you let me vote for my 18, I'll just press the button. We can, in fact, do that before. The other 12 can also vote in advance by proxy, just one of their party representatives turn up. 18 and 12, you've got 30 straight away, no need to have a debate, really efficient. So in fact, that could really well work well. We could vote before the debate, actually takes place and only have debates on issues that we can't find agreement on before we debate it. And of course, that would be really attractive to some parties, especially parties who want to reduce the amount of time we spend in the Assembly. We've already seen a move from a 2-week cycle to a 3-week cycle. That could be pushed back to 4 weeks. We could meet once every 3 months, perhaps. And we could have virtually no question time if we get the right Chief Minister elected. And of course, he's already lining himself up to be the Chief Minister. He's already bought his ticket to come back to Jersey. So that will be exciting. But of course, that's not inevitable. I think there's something important about being in this Assembly in person. That said, we've seen that there is, I try to be open-minded, so I'm looking at Part A with a different pair of eyes. Because let's look at the reality of it. What if you are ill? And the wording, again, I think isn't perfect, but that's not a problem. We've got to try and look, I think, at the spirit of what Part A is trying to say. I've seen a scenario where members have joined scrutiny meetings because they've been in the UK receiving radiotherapy. Is that a bad thing? Should a member of the Assembly who, and I've sat in the scrutiny meeting downstairs with him on a screen, and he's been receiving radiotherapy somewhere in the UK, and he's decided that he wants to join the meeting because he's a diligent member of the Assembly, he's a diligent scrutineer, and he's also, let's face it, probably got a lot of free time out there, because once you've had your radiotherapy for however long it lasts a day, you're sitting in a hotel room, possibly on your own. You don't necessarily want to go out, and you want some form of semblance of normality. What's the difference between joining a scrutiny meeting and joining an Assembly where you can log in, you can listen to the debate, you can speak if you want to, and you can vote and represent your constituents? That's a genuine reason, I think. And if we can establish a scenario, that's why I think the unforeseen circumstances is perhaps, I'm not necessarily keen on that wording. I think if there are foreseen circumstances, I have to go to the UK because my mother-in-law is about to die, and she's not, by the way, but hypothetically speaking, or she's receiving treatment and we need to be there to take care of her. Is that a legitimate reason? Should I have to make the choice of not representing my constituents and my family needs if, in fact, when I'm up there, I can be sitting down in front of a computer, you know, from 9 till 5 with the occasional need to do something else? I think we are in a new world. We're living in a world where we can use technology for the benefit, and we can make judgment calls on where the line lies. And of course, that can be done in conversation with the future PPC and the future chair of the Assembly. It does put a lot of pressure and a lot of discretion on the shoulders of whoever the chair is. But I think if we can have a proper list of circumstances in which somebody might be able to join, what I wouldn't want to see is routinely ministers thinking that they can leave the island, or CPA chairs, not the current one, but anyone in future, thinking, actually, I'm just going to spend most of my time away now and I'm going to be an absentee minister, an absentee chair, because I know I can dial in. That must never be allowed to happen. So I will listen to other colleagues. I think certainly when we discussed this as a party, we were very concerned about the direction of travel, and we certainly weren't supportive of proxy voting. But I think that I'll wait to hear in summing up, probably tomorrow, what the mover says about this, because I think there is a grey area where the public interest can be served by us being a little bit more flexible on this.
It's 5 minutes before the time when I would ask members if they wish to continue. There's time, I think, for one more speaker, but I imagine other members will wish to speak in this debate. It would be helpful just to get an indication if members are intending to speak at some point. I won't make a note of names or anything like that. If we just get an indication by a show of lights, that would be helpful.
I'm on Teams, sir.
Right, well, that's at least another 3. I was going to call on Deputy Martin, but I'm just conscious that at 5:30 there are matters of procedure that the Assembly needs to deal with before we can continue with the debate. So, Deputy Martin, I'm happy to call on you now.
Yes, it's going to be a very short speech, sir. I just wanted to point out a few things. The only one that I may support, because I can understand where the deputy coming from, is A. I wanted to put a completely different complexity on B, especially when the deputy was talking about family friendly. Now, I think I'm quite a strong person. Now, I wasn't well Monday, and I came in because I wasn't sure. I came in virtually, so I had 2 last questions to answer already, and I wasn't sure if my assistant minister was around. But I have a very foggy head, etc. But I could work on Teams. I had COVID. I still had COVID. I really want to get in there, sir. But the example that it gave about family friendly, now my family friendly that we've all passed, if you're employed, you are not allowed to work for the first 6 weeks of that baby's life. That's for protecting mum and protecting baby. And I'm just concerned, if it were, if we allowed proxy votes on those, maybe not a stronger person, I've just given an example, I think I could be quite strong, but even I thought, I can't say I can't go in and do this virtually, I should do it. And if I've just had a baby and my head's not in it, but I've got a deputy manager, a party who needs my vote, I'm very, very concerned. We are keeping an eye on the next minister about this virtual working and everything. You still are ill, you shouldn't be working. Absolutely different with COVID, you're giving me a great facility where I can participate. I'm saying I probably shouldn't have done on Monday. Tuesday and today I'm feeling a lot better and I just can't wait till the red lines go away, sir. But please think of that. We have protection for employees. We're a very strange kettle, and I wouldn't want anybody, mum or dad, but mum is definitely protected by law, and then there's paternity leave. I wouldn't want anyone to feel forced to go in so they can have a proxy vote. Sorry, sir. Thank you.
I wonder if, thank you very much, Deputy. Given that there are a number of members speaking, we will obviously need to proceed tomorrow morning. I wonder if members will be minded, after one procedural matter, to adjourn at this point.
Yes, sir.
Very well, thank you very much. Chair of PPC.
Thank you, sir. This is our current Greffia's last meeting with us in the States Assembly. So I'd just like to say a few words on behalf of all of us sitting here today. I'd like to thank Mark for the wonderful service he has provided to us since he was sworn in as Greffia of the States on the 19th of January 2016. Before being appointed as Greffia, Mark worked for the House of Commons in the UK. He was previously the deputy head of the Table Office, leading a team of 7 clerks, dealing with more than 250 parliamentary questions every day and advising on working and parliamentary rules. He was also the Secretary of the History of Parliament Trust and was leading work on diversity in recruitment practices. Perhaps one of the most notable successes Mark has achieved during his time as Greffia was keeping the Assembly running during the COVID-19 pandemic with the use of Microsoft Teams. As has already been noted today, under Mark's leadership, our Parliament became the first in the Commonwealth to sit virtually, and we were still able to pass laws and be held to account even through a global pandemic. Internally, the States Greff has also seen a number of changes since Mark joined the organisation. Mark oversaw the restructure of the Greff in 2019, which unified the various sections. Mark also worked to improve the services for members, which led to a new section being created, the Members' Resources. We are now able to contact the team and be provided with support on both our Assembly and constituency work. Mark has also worked with the Diversity Forum in order to improve the diversity of the States Assembly and increase public engagement in democratic processes by underrepresented groups. He's also worked with PPC Pension Subcommittee to bring in pensions for States members for the very first time. I thought it was important to include members' words in this speech, so I asked members if they had any contributions they would like to be included, and these are some of the things they said. As evidenced by his doctorate and subsequent participation in the academic community, Mark has brought significant academic credibility and rigour to his role as greffier. His political expertise and empathetic nature make him an asset to this Assembly and the island. We have been lucky to have an expert of his calibre working to develop and improve the services accessed by States members and the wider community. Mark is an insightful and reflective person. His professionalism and aspiration to make the working environment of States members more up-to-date has been demonstrated through his support of work intended to make the States Assembly accessible to typically disadvantaged groups, such as young women and parents. His dry sense of humour has helped to keep me motivated at challenging moments, and I'm grateful for his professionalism and support. He has made significant improvements to the State's GREF during his time of leadership, and I have no doubt that the changes he has made will contribute to the future diversity of membership of the Assembly. By contributing to the improvement of working arrangements and practices, Mark has contributed to changing attitudes and being a voice at the table when young women members in particular have not always been heard. I am grateful for his allyship and his understanding that equally doesn't always mean giving everyone the same thing, but rather giving people the tools they need to succeed. I wish to thank him for his monumental impact behind the scenes. Mark's mission, it seems, has been to provide a gold standard of support in terms of providing members with assistance in doing their jobs effectively. From the start, he broke the mould in how he did this, and it's fair to say that backbenchers in particular have been able to achieve a huge amount more with the measures he has brought in. He brought with him not just contacts from Westminster, but a hugely valuable outside perspective, which has resulted in many innovations. Mark has always been responsive to members, and his sharp intelligence meant that he was able to turn around requests often very quickly and to an impressively high standard. I think it's fair to say that democracy in Jersey has been very well served by Mark. As States members, we do not have a HR department or much in the way of pastoral support because of course, this is not an ordinary job. Mark, in his time as greffier, has often been the one to provide this support to members, as well as his competence with the practical work associated with being the greffier. His calm manner and great listening skills have served members well. Indeed, he has balanced a dignified composure with a light-heartedness that often reminded us that, yes, this is an important job we do, but not to take ourselves too seriously and to look after our own well-being as well. And as a final contribution, I won't say who it is, but I'm sure Mark will be able to work it out. Whilst it is good to hear of a Mackham returning home, we would be grateful if you could inform him that in the unlikely event of Sunderland getting to Wembley in the foreseeable future, we would be grateful if he could refrain from attending. Quite frankly, the man is a jinx. So, sir, I'm sure all members will agree that he will be missed, not just for his expertise and experience, but for his sense of humour and his camaraderie with members. So I'd just like to end by saying thank you, Mark. We hope you keep in touch and return to the island often, and we wish you all the very best in whatever you do in the future. Thank you so much.
Well, the greffier will just have to blush because he has no right of reply at this point. But he will have a right of reply shortly when we adjourn and we go to the members' room for a reception where Mark will be, and we can all speak to him and bid our farewells, I think. This is actually the day before Mark's last day. Mark's last day is tomorrow. And please excuse me for not referring to him as the greffier, but I think in the circumstances we're almost adjourned. And it is his last day, in fact, tomorrow. But for practical reasons, this is the time to have made the remarks that we had. Now, just before we adjourn, Chair of PPC, is there any other matter you would wish to raise?
Yes, sir, there are a couple. I'd like us to be able to take, the appointment of the new greffier, P72, first thing tomorrow morning, if possible.
Well, could I notify members, thank you for that, and we'll ask members if they agree. I'm intending to permit a statement by the Chief Minister that members would have been anticipating as the first item tomorrow, and then you would wish that taken as the next item, but that would of course be after, I think, the conclusion of the debate that we're currently having. Would that be a...
Yes, please, sir.
Well, is that seconded? Does any member wish to speak on that particular proposition for arrangement of business? I'll take that on the standing vote. Those in favour, kindly show. Those against? You can still put your hand up, Deputy of Trinity. It's perfectly all right. Is the adjournment proposed?
Indeed, sir.
Can I just propose one more thing?
Of course,
sir.
yes, Chair.
Obviously, I think we're making our way quite well through the order paper at the moment. I have spoken to a few members behind the scenes, and I wanted to propose shortening the lunch break tomorrow and maybe considering looking at sitting a bit later tomorrow as well. I'd like to do those two things separately. Maybe if people would like to make comment about how they feel about sitting later on shortening the lunch periods as well, so I can get an indication of how we feel. And I'm quite happy to maybe revisit that tomorrow instead. So I'd like to propose shortening the lunch break tomorrow to an hour. If we could do, it's been suggested 12:45 to 1:45, as sometimes doing from 1 till 2 can be difficult to get into places to get food.
So your first proposition is to shorten the lunch and adjournment tomorrow from 12:45 to 1:45. Is that seconded?
Yes, please.
Does any member wish to speak on the proposition?
So the comment I would make is that as we spend days, consecutive days in the States, many of us have meetings planned for the lunch break. So I don't think I could personally support that, because it's just not possible to have meetings and complete lunch in that time scale. So ordinarily I would say yes, but I think because of the pressure of sitting all week, it's just a logistical outcome of it. So.
Well, thank you, Senator. Obviously, it is a matter for the Assembly. Does any other member wish to speak?
Sir.
Deputy Sir Martin?
So, might I just ask the Chairman what her intentions would be if we don't finish the order paper by Friday evening?
Well, that's something that certainly doesn't actually specifically relate to the proposition before the Assembly at the moment, but I'm sure the Chair can answer that if she wishes. Any other member wish to speak on this proposition, which is the shortened lunch hour? Deputy Ward.
Thanks, sir. Regards to the meetings, that is in fact the case at lunchtime. But also, if we're going to extend the day on tomorrow, which will probably be likely, because I can foresee that we say we'll extend the day, it will be difficult to fit meetings into any other time because work is going on outside as well. So just consider that when you think about this. So that's all.
Does any other member wish to speak? No other member wishes to speak? Close the debate and call upon the Chair to respond.
Thank you, sir. I think with regards to finishing what's on the order paper, I think we would just have to sit until we did finish what's on the order paper. Otherwise, I don't think it would be fair, but obviously I would be in the hands of the Assembly and we could look at proposing an alternative. But
Point of clarification, please.
There's a point of clarification. Will you give way for a point of clarification? Point of clarification, yes.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful. Does the Chairman mean sit until we're finished by sitting on Saturday or Tuesday, or continuing on Friday evening until the order paper is complete?
Thank you, sir. I would say Friday evening. Obviously, in the last sitting, when we had a very similar discussion, I did make it quite clear at in the order of public business that there are things like planning committee going on next week, and that is the last one until, I believe, September, which is quite a big delay. So obviously, we have to be mindful of that, and that would take out quite a significant number of members from this Assembly. So, so I maintain the proposition. Thank you.
So I'm going to put this, I think, to the appel, simply on the basis that there may be strong contrary views. The vote is on whether or not we've shortened the lunch hour from 12:45 to 1:45. I ask the greffier to open the voting. Those participating in the chat, kindly note in the normal way. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, ask the greffier to close the voting. Proposition has been adopted. 37 votes for, 8 votes contra, no abstentions. Now, do you move the next stage of your arrangement, Chair?
Yes, please, sir. I think it's worth just seeing how members feel about maybe sitting till 8 o'clock tomorrow with a half an hour break and just gather people's ideas and thoughts on that.
So the proposition is to sit until 8 p.m. With a half-hour break at some point to be arranged to allow people to sort of regroup a little bit. Is that seconded? Is that proposition seconded? Very well. Does any member wish to speak? Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I remember when we were debating island plan, we decided to sit till 8. We said we had like till 7, and the next day we had a half day. And what I would suggest that we will, I voted for shortening lunchtime, and I would probably vote for shortening lunchtime on Friday. And tomorrow I'll probably propose to start at 9 or 8:30 on Friday, and see how we are going when we finish on Friday. But I would prefer not to think in advance to sit till 8 and after finish half day through. This is my opinion. Thank you.
Very well. Deputy Pamplin.
Thank you, sir. This is the last day sitting. The difference between 4 years ago, I remember covering it live on air, was there was a nomination evening and there was a rush to get to that. That isn't happening this time. This is the public's business before we have an extraordinary week next week with planning, with a funeral, there's Liberation Day, and then because of the move of the election. This was talked about months ago. This shouldn't be a surprise. We have to conclude the public's business. The Chief Minister will be giving a statement tomorrow with probably a period of question time. We're having an in-camera debate on the new greffier of the States. This has been on the order paper for weeks. We have to conclude state's business for the public, and we have to make those difficult decisions. It is difficult, but that's why we took the oath of office. We have to complete state's business. We have to also consider your staff, sir, the greffier staff, and the members of the security and everybody affected. But we have to have these conversations. We have to conclude. But it is slightly different to the last time. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak? No other member? Deputy Greville.
Thank you, sir. If we are going to meet late after 5:30 tomorrow, I'd just like to put on record that I have a pre-arranged Jersey Overseas Aid meeting that has been arranged for months. It is state's business, and I'd just like to put on record that I can't attend beyond 5:30 tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Deputy Pershard.
Thank you, sir. Like Deputy Gardner and some other members, I have caring responsibilities. Members know I don't have a teenager, I have a tiny baby. We all know this. It's not a secret. I can't stay late. I can possibly go and come back, but I have genuine caring responsibilities that I cannot neglect. So as long as members understand that by choosing to do this, members are being punitive towards those who with genuine caring responsibilities, that is a decision members are absolute liberty to make, but that is the reality of my current situation. And we're having a mid-debate on an inclusive issue. So I just wanted to put on record that this has been said repeatedly, but by Deputy Doublé and by me, as the only kind of childbearing people in the last 2 terms. And I get that we're a minority. I know people don't like to hear it. I know it's, I do understand that we're a minority, but it's a genuine caring responsibility for a tiny baby. So if you could just bear that in mind, members could just bear that in mind, I'd be really grateful. And as the deputy suggested, maybe we could look at how we go on Friday, where we are on Friday, and if we do need to stay late, it should be an absolute need, not a kind of luxurious thing we do prematurely. Thank you.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak?
So I think we should take heed of Deputy Pershard's remarks, because Deputy Pershard has prepared over the last months for the carbon neutral debate, which is a major debate. And I certainly, sir, if we do go ahead and approve this evening and Deputy Pershard is not able to be here, I shall be asking for the order of the debate to be changed to allow Deputy Pershard to lead on that matter as proposed, sir. I just put that there for members to think about, because I think that what Deputy Pershard said, I think, should carry weight with members.
Thank you very much, Deputies. Any other member wish to speak? No other member wishes to speak? I close the debate and call upon the Chair of PPC to respond.
Thank you, sir. I think it's important to obviously give members this option. I'm happy to reassess this as we go along tomorrow. I just wanted to kind of give as much time as possible to members. But I will maintain this proposition to see how members feel. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. You call for the appel, I think?
Call for the appel, sir.
Very well. In which case, I ask the greffier to open the voting and those participating remotely to vote in the normal way. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. Sorry? That's not right, is it? We've got 3 contre in the chat. 3 contre in the chat and 1 pour. So we've got one, so it's 22 there. 21, 19, 20, 21. Oh, so we do. The proposition is defeated. 22 votes pour, 22 votes contre.
Thank you.
Sir, could I now propose the adjournment, please?
The adjournment is proposed. The Assembly...
Sir, it was just, I do apologise, because when it comes to the order of business, it seems like something of a free-for-all, so I never know quite when to come in. But I have an issue with P68 tomorrow. I'm intended to be presenting it. It's the Channel Islands allocation, the Channel Islands lottery allocation of proceeds. I was just wondering, because tomorrow with this delegation from Barneville-Carteret, I won't necessarily be here to read it or to present it at the right time. I was wondering if I could ask for it to be taken at either the end of the day or first thing on Friday.
Well, I think we've already had adjustments to the order of business running tomorrow morning. I think we're going to slightly confused if we fix business, but I think you've given notice of that to the Assembly. I'm sure the Assembly will be understanding if we reach the point where it normally would be called, but you are not here to take it. And would members, I think, this is not a vote, could I get an indication whether members would accept, in those circumstances, a deferment until later in the day? There appears to be a large measure of agreement. It's not formally voted upon, but I think you can take comfort from that.
I thank the Assembly.
Very well, the Assembly stands... the Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning.